Tonight, we step into a world where the wind carves its path across an endless white prairie, sharp and relentless, and your breath hangs in the air like tiny clouds before vanishing into the cold. You're standing just outside a cone-shaped shelter made of buffalo hide, stretched taut over tall wooden poles. The air nips at your cheeks, already stiff with frost, and beneath your boots, the ground crackles with a thin layer of ice. So quiet, yet so loud in the stillness that surrounds you. You know, deep down, that surviving a night like this wouldn't be possible without help. But then you see it, a soft orange glow flickering from within the shelter, promising warmth in a place where warmth seems impossible. You take a step forward, drawn by the hope of heat, imagining it wrapping around you like a secret passed down through generations. Go ahead and make yourself comfortable, but before you settle in completely, if you're enjoying this moment, consider liking the video or subscribing. Only if it truly resonates with you, of course. And if you feel like it, drop a comment letting me know where you are and what time it is where you're listening. Then dim your lights, ease back, and let's walk into tonight's journey together. You lift the heavy hide flap and duck inside. The first thing that greets you is the scent, smoke, earth, and the deep, rich aroma of cured hides mingling in the air. The warmth here isn't like the steady, mechanical heat of a modern radiator. Instead, it comes in gentle waves, like the slow breath of something ancient and alive. At the center of it all, a fire burns low and steady, its flames calm but purposeful, radiating a heat that feels almost tender after the biting cold outside. Light dances up the curved walls, casting shadows that shift and sway, as if the lodge itself is breathing. There's a quiet brilliance to this design, something you might not notice at first glance. For centuries, Plains tribes like the Lakota, Blackfoot, and Crow perfected this kind of shelter, crafting portable homes that could endure both scorching summers and winters so cold they'd freeze the breath in your lungs. This wasn't happenstance. It was engineering shaped by necessity, refined across countless migrations, storms, and seasons. Your hands, still stiff from the cold outside, stretched toward the fire. You can feel the gradient of warmth, your palms growing comfortable, while your head remains cool beneath the open smoke hole above. And that hole, it's no accidental gap. It's carefully placed, allowing smoke to escape without letting precious heat bleed out. The wind direction determines how the hide flaps are positioned, and tonight, they're angled to the northwest, blocking the icy gust you felt the moment you stepped outside. A curious detail comes to mind. Some tribes even use snow to their advantage, packing drifts around the base of the teepee to seal out drafts. It sounds strange at first, using frozen water to stay warm, but snow acted like a natural windbreak, locking in the warmth near the ground, much like modern insulation does today. Historians still debate whether the teepee's iconic shape developed mainly for aerodynamics, to shed prairie winds like water off a duck's back, or for practicality during frequent moves. Right now, watching how the wind flows around the structure, without shaking it, you lean toward the first theory. Inside, people move deliberately, speaking in low, unhurried voices. Someone adjusts a hide at the entrance, tucking it snugly to block a sneaky draft. Another adds a few small sticks to the fire, not enough to cause a flare, just enough to keep its heart beating. This isn't about cranking up the heat like we do with thermostats. It's about balance. Fuel against effort, warmth against smoke. You sit cross-legged on a thick buffalo hide. It's dense for soft beneath you, insulating you from the frozen earth below. The hide still carries a trace of the animal's presence, a reminder that here, warmth isn't abstract. It's a gift, earned through relationship and respect. The sting on your cheeks begins to fade. Your body, once tense from bracing against the wind, relaxes into the stillness. Outside, the night stretches vast and unbroken. But in here, you're wrapped in a pocket of survival knowledge, so refined it feels like magic. Firelight ripples over the faces around you, revealing calm, watchfulness, and a deep, unspoken trust. You begin to understand. For those who grew up in this space, the teepee isn't just a shelter. It's a finely tuned machine for living, a harmony of poles, hides, and human ingenuity that holds winter at bay with quiet confidence. In the silence, you hear the softest of snowflakes brushing against the outer walls. Somewhere beyond, the wind moans to the prairie grass, But inside, you're warm enough to slip off your mittens and rest them beside you. That small act feels miraculous. You wonder how you'd survive a night like this without the knowledge of these people, their craftsmanship, and the wisdom of centuries. The truth is simple. You wouldn't. You run your fingers along the inner wall, where thick buffalo hides overlap. Each panel is heavy, dense with winter fur, stitched together with sinew so tightly you can barely see the seams. These hides aren't just coverings. They're the heart of the tipi's insulation. Without them, the frame would be nothing but bones for the wind to whistle through. The texture beneath your hand shifts from rough to soft, as if the animal spirit still lingers in the grain. To these tribes, the buffalo was more than food. It was their supplier, their tailor, their builder. A single mature buffalo could provide enough hide to cover an entire small teepee, and winter hides, with their thick fur and dense undercoat, were especially prized for their insulating power. A sudden gust rattles the entrance flap, but the hides respond not like rigid walls, but like living skin, flexing, bending, softening the wind's force before it reaches you. The seams overlap like shingles on a roof, directing moisture downward and away. In deep cold, extra hides could be layered over the top, adding warmth just as you might pile on blankets. Some families even painted symbols onto their hides, not only for beauty, but to tell stories or mark their identity. Imagine your home's insulation printed with your life's history, far more elegant than pink fiberglass batting. Tonight, we step into a world where the wind carves its path across an endless white prairie, sharp and relentless, and your breath hangs in the air like tiny clouds before vanishing into the cold. You're standing just outside a cone-shaped shelter made of buffalo hide, stretched taut over tall wooden poles. The air nips at your cheeks, already stiff with frost, and beneath your boots, the ground crackles with a thin layer of ice. So quiet, yet so loud in the stillness that surrounds you. You know, deep down, that surviving a night like this wouldn't be possible without help. But then you see it, a soft orange glow flickering from within the shelter, promising warmth in a place where warmth seems impossible. You take a step forward, drawn by the hope of heat, imagining it wrapping around you like a secret passed down through generations. Go ahead and make yourself comfortable, but before you settle in completely, if you're enjoying this moment, consider liking the video or subscribing. Only if it truly resonates with you, of course. And if you feel like it, drop a comment letting me know where you are and what time it is where you're listening. Then dim your lights, ease back, and let's walk into tonight's journey together. You lift the heavy hide flap and duck inside. The first thing that greets you is the scent, smoke, earth, and the deep, rich aroma of cured hides mingling in the air. The warmth here isn't like the steady, mechanical heat of a modern radiator. Instead, it comes in gentle waves, like the slow breath of something ancient and alive. At the center of it all, a fire burns low and steady, its flames calm but purposeful, radiating a heat that feels almost tender after the biting cold outside. Light dances up the curved walls, casting shadows that shift and sway, as if the lodge itself is breathing. There's a quiet brilliance to this design, something you might not notice at first glance. For centuries, Plains tribes like the Lakota, Blackfoot, and Crow perfected this kind of shelter, crafting portable homes that could endure both scorching summers and winters so cold they'd freeze the breath in your lungs. This wasn't happenstance. It was engineering shaped by necessity, refined across countless migrations, storms, and seasons. Your hands, still stiff from the cold outside, stretched toward the fire. You can feel the gradient of warmth, your palms growing comfortable, while your head remains cool beneath the open smoke hole above. And that hole, it's no accidental gap. It's carefully placed, allowing smoke to escape without letting precious heat bleed out. The wind direction determines how the hide flaps are positioned, and tonight, they're angled to the northwest, blocking the icy gusts you felt the moment you stepped outside. A curious detail comes to mind. Some tribes even use snow to their advantage, packing drifts around the base of the teepee to seal out drafts. It sounds strange at first, using frozen water to stay warm, but snow acted like a natural windbreak, locking in the warmth near the ground, much like modern insulation does today. Historians still debate whether the teepee's iconic shape developed mainly for aerodynamics, to shed prairie winds like water off a duck's back, or for practicality during frequent moves. Right now, watching how the wind flows around the structure, without shaking it, you lean toward the first theory. Inside, people move deliberately, speaking in low, unhurried voices. Someone adjusts a hide at the entrance, tucking it snugly to block a sneaky draft. Another adds a few small sticks to the fire, not enough to cause a flare, just enough to keep his heart beating. This isn't about cranking up the heat like we do with thermostats. It's about balance. Fuel against effort, warmth against smoke. You sit cross-legged on a thick buffalo hide. It's dense for soft beneath you, insulating you from the frozen earth below. The hide still carries a trace of the animal's presence, a reminder that here, warmth isn't abstract. It's a gift, earned through relationship and respect. The sting on your cheeks begins to fade. Your body, once tense from bracing against the wind, relaxes into the stillness. Outside, the night stretches vast and unbroken. But in here, you're wrapped in a pocket of survival knowledge, so refined it feels like magic. Firelight ripples over the faces around you, revealing calm, watchfulness, and a deep, unspoken trust. You begin to understand. For those who grew up in this space, the teepee isn't just a shelter. It's a finely tuned machine for living, a harmony of poles, hides, and human ingenuity that holds winter at bay with quiet confidence. In the silence, you hear the softest of snowflakes brushing against the outer walls. Somewhere beyond, the wind moans to the prairie grass. But inside, you're warm enough to slip off your mittens and rest them beside you. That small act feels miraculous. You wonder how you'd survive a night like this without the knowledge of these people, their craftsmanship, and the wisdom of centuries. The truth is simple. You wouldn't. You run your fingers along the inner wall, where thick buffalo hides overlap. Each panel is heavy, dense with winter fur, stitched together with sinew so tightly you can barely see the seams. These hides aren't just coverings. They're the heart of the teepee's insulation. Without them, the frame would be nothing but bones for the wind to whistle through. The texture beneath your hand shifts from rough to soft, as the animal spirit still lingers in the grain. To these tribes, the buffalo was more than food. It was their supplier, their tailor, their builder. A single mature buffalo could provide enough hide to cover an entire small teepee, and winter hides, with their thick fur and dense undercoat, were especially prized for their insulating power. A sudden gust rattles the entrance flap, but the hides respond not like rigid walls, but like living skin, flexing, bending, softening the wind's force before it reaches you. The seams overlap like shingles on a roof, directing moisture downward and away. In deep cold, extra hides could be layered over the top, adding warmth just as you might pile on blankets. Some families even painted symbols onto their hides, not only for beauty, but to tell stories or mark their identity. Imagine your home's insulation printed with your life's history, far more elegant than pink fiberglass batting. Scholars still debate whether this practice of layering hides was universal among all plains tribes or more common in buffalo-rich regions. You suspect it varied. People always adapt to the resources they have. Your eyes trace the way the hide is lashed to the poles with rawhide thongs. As they dry, they shrink, pulling the whole structure tighter. Nature's own version of ratchet straps. The hides themselves are smoked, making them water-resistant and rot-resistant. Lean in close, and you catch a faint, earthy tang of that smoke, a natural sealant with no chemicals needed. Across the fire, someone is mending a seam. A bone needle slips to the hide with quiet precision, stitching so fine it nearly disappears. You realize then that maintaining these covers is as vital as making them. A single tear left unattended could become a frozen draft by nightfall. The warmth inside isn't overwhelming. It's steady, comforting, like the embrace of a thick wool sweater. You begin to see that the insulation isn't just about trapping heat. It's about creating a stable microclimate where temperature shifts slowly, giving your body time to adjust. Outside, you know the cold has deepened since sunset. On the prairie, winter isn't just weather. It's a predator, always testing your defenses for weakness. But here, the hides hold firm, the seams stay tight, and the fire does its quiet, essential work. You pull your robe closer and think of your own world, where cold is solved with a flick of a dial. Here, warmth is a relationship. You must tend it, feed it, protect it. You look again at the hides, not just seeing their function, but feeling the labor behind them. The hunt, the skinning, the scraping, the curing, the sewing. This is an insulation you buy. It's insulation you earn. As you lean back against the furs, you picture snow piling higher outside, pressing gently against the base of the teepee. Instead of fear, there's a sense of reassurance. Each flake adds another layer of protection. The hides breathe slowly in the wind, alive in their own way. You move closer to the fire center. Its heat brushes your cheeks like a familiar hand. The flames have settled into glowing coals now. Steady, confident, no longer wild. At the heart of the space lies the fire pit, slightly dug into the earth and ringed with stones that hold warmth long after the flames fade. Everyone gives it space, not out of fear but respect. The fire isn't just a source of heat. It's the anchor of the entire interior climate. You recall a quiet truth. The conical shape of the teepee isn't just beautiful. It's functional. Warm air rises from the fire, meets the sloping walls, and rolls gently back down, creating a natural convection current that circulates heat instead of letting it escape uselessly upward. And then there's the smoke hole, cleverly designed with two adjustable flaps tied to poles that can be moved from inside. Tonight, they're angled so the smoke drifts out with the wind, rather than being forced back down. Open it too wide and you lose heat. Close it too much and smoke fills the space. It's a delicate balance, constantly monitored without fuss or fanfare. A small, charming detail comes to mind. Some accounts say children were taught early how to read the smoke. If it rose straight and thin, the vent was just right. If it swirled or flattened, it was time to make an adjustment. Even the youngest learned to listen to the shelter, to work with it, not against it. And in that quiet wisdom, you find the heart of it all, not just survival, but harmony. Imagine growing up where the first sign of changing weather was a buzzing phone alert, but the curl of smoke from your family's fire. If it rose straight and thin, the air was calm. If it swirled or flattened, the wind was shifting, and the camp might need adjusting. Smoke wasn't an annoyance. It was your earliest forecast, read before you could even speak. Historians still debate whether the central fire design of the Plains teepee came from earlier indigenous housing styles or was born entirely from demands of the open prairie. You find yourself believing it was probably a little of both. Ideas travel, carried on trade routes and shared stories, but necessity has a way of reshaping them to fit the land you stand on. And here on the wind-scoured plains, every detail had to earn its place. The fire itself burns clean, fed by dry wood gathered from riverbanks or sheltered groves. You notice the logs are small, not massive trunks. That's by design. Smaller pieces burn hotter, faster, and produce less smoke, keeping the air inside clear and the heat steady. It's almost as if the fire breathes in rhythm with the people around it, rising when someone stirs, softening when the room settles. At the edges of the teepee, tucked into the shadows, sit neat bundles of kindling and carefully stacked logs. You realize then that this fire never truly sleeps during the long winter months. Even in the deepest part of the night, someone wakes to feed it, a quiet, continuous vigil that keeps the coal from slipping through the seams. It's a rhythm of care, not convenience. You think of your own heating systems, set the thermostat, and forget it. Here, warmth is alive. It asks for your attention, your hands, your presence. In return, it offers not just heat, but companionship. Its crackle becomes part of the night's lullaby, as constant and reassuring as the wind outside. A thin ribbon of smoke curls past you, carrying the earthy, slightly sweet scent of burning willow. It clings to your clothes, your hair, just as it must cling to every robe and hide in the lodge. But instead of irritation, it brings comfort. This scent doesn't mean something's wrong. It means you're safe. You breathe it in, and it settles deep in your chest like a quiet promise. Firelight paints the faces around you in copper and shadow. Someone stirs a pot hanging above the flames, and the rich aroma of stew weaves into the warmth, deepening the sense of shelter. You catch yourself smiling. The cold is still out there, vast, indifferent, relentless. But in this circle of light and breath and shared silence, it feels like an entirely different world. Curiosity pulls you outside for just a moment. You step beyond the flap, and the cold hits like a blade, sharp, immediate, stealing your breath before you've even taken 2 steps. Frost crystals form on your eyelashes. But as you walk a little farther, something catches your eye. The teepees aren't scattered at random. They're nestled into a gentle hollow in the prairie, shielded on two sides by low rises and a stand of bare cottonwoods. It's no accident. Many Plains tribes chose winter camp locations with deep intention, seeking protection from wind, access to water, and proximity to fuel. The hollow breaks the force of the worst gusts, and the cottonwoods hint at a nearby water source, even beneath the snow. You crunch through the snow toward the outer edge of camp, feel the wind rush stronger there. Then, as you step back into the hollow, it vanishes, as if you cross an invisible threshold. You realize then that placement is as vital as design. A perfectly built teepee in the wrong spot would still let the cold win. This land itself is part of the shelter. A quiet memory surfaces. Some oral histories tell of elders who could read the wind just by standing still, listening. They'd walk the land in silence before a move, then point to the exact spot where the camp should go. Not guesswork, but a kind of living meteorology, tuned to the subtle language of air and sound. Historians wonder whether this knowledge came from centuries of collective trial and error, or if certain individuals held a special gift for it, like early weather scouts. You suspect it was both, a shared wisdom sharpened by those with especially quiet ears. You look again at how the teepees are arranged, openings generally facing east, away from the prevailing winter winds. There's space just enough for narrow paths, but close enough that each one helps shield the next. Even the outermost lodges benefit from their neighbors. And some are backed by snow banks, deliberately shaped and padded smooth to deflect wind upward and over the camp. In the hollow, the silence is profound, not empty but full. Without the wind roaring your ears, you hear the soft clink of a kettle lid inside a lodge, a dog shifting in its sleep, distant laughter from children who haven't yet been called in for night. It's a calmness you didn't notice until you stepped away from it. Back inside your own teepee, the shift is immediate. Warmth, firelight, voices. You think again of your modern life, where climate control is handed over to machines. Here, even geography is part of the heating system. The land isn't just a backdrop. It's a partner in survival. You settle once more by the fire, your cheeks still tingling from the brief trip outside. Now you understand. Warmth in a teepee doesn't begin at the fire. It starts long before, with knowing where to stand against the wind, how to let the curves of the earth work for you. Beneath you isn't just a place to sit. It's a carefully built foundation for survival. Closest to the frozen ground lies a base of woven mats or reed screens, lifting everything above direct contact with the cold earth. On top rests a generous layer of buffalo and deer hides, first side up, soft, thick, almost luxurious in the stark landscape. Archaeological and ethnographic records confirm what you can feel with your own hands. Plains tribes use layered bedding not just for comfort, but as critical insulation. Heat escapes downward just as easily as upward, and without this buffer, even a roaring fire wouldn't keep you warm through the night. You press your palm into the fur and feel the trapped air, the original insulation, far more effective than any synthetic foam. The fur springs back when you lift your hand, ready to capture your body heat again. Each hide is placed with purpose, some for softness, others for sheer thickness. There are stories of especially prized winter hides. So plush and warm, they were offered to honor guests like the finest blanket in the house. Sometimes, the most beautifully painted or beaded hides were part of the bedding, functional art, woven into daily life. Historians still debate whether sleeping arrangements followed strict rules. Elders in certain spots, guests in others, supplies tucked in specific corners. The truth likely varied by family, tribe, and season. But here in this lodge, there's a gentle rhythm. People gathered in arcs around the fire, bedding forming a continuous ring broken only by the doorway. As you sink fully on the hides, their scent rises, smoke, earth time. It's not the crisp, artificial freshness of modern linens, but something deeper, older. It roots you in the moment, in the place, in the lineage of those who slept here before. This bedding does more than keep you warm. It helps regulate your relationship with the fire. Too close, and you'd overheat. Too far, and you'd chill. The ring of hides creates a natural gradient, a living thermostat. Those near the flames bask in direct heat, while those farther out nestle deeper into their layers. A child nearby shifts in sleep, pulling a fur over their head. Firelight flickers across their bundled shape, making them look like part of the earth itself. You smile. Warmth here isn't a single thing. It's the sum of countless small acts. The fire tended, the hides layered, the camp placed just so, the people watching, listening, caring. You shift slightly, and the furs wrap around you with a sigh. Outside, the wind can howl all at once. But down here, lifted just above the frozen ground, you're held in a system perfected over generations, where survival wasn't a battle, but a quiet collaboration with the world. You pull a heavy sleeping robe over your shoulders. It's not thin or scratchy. It's a thick, supple buffalo hide, tanned to drape like a second skin, lined with dense winter fur that wraps from chin to ankle. The moment it settles around you, you feel your own body heat reflected back, held close. These robes weren't an afterthought. They were personal climate control for the coldest nights. Early European explorers and traders often wrote about them with envy, noting that a single buffalo robe worn fur side inward could outwarm several wool blankets. That wasn't luck. It was expertise. Winter robes came from animals hunted late in the season, when their coats were thickest. The tanning process left the leather soft yet strong, without stiff folds where cold might sneak in. You run your fingers over the outer surface, smooth, darkened by smoke, and then into the inner fur, deep enough to disappear your hand. It carries the quiet scent of wind, dry grass, and old campfires. And as you think about how modern sleeping bags come with temperature ratings and technical specs, you realize something simple. Here, warmth wasn't engineered in a lab. It was grown, hunted, stitched, chosen, and passed down, layer by layer, generation by generation, until it became not just shelter, but home. Here, warmth isn't measured in degrees or technical ratings. It's held in the thickness of the fur and the quiet mastery of the tanning craft. Some winter robes were so cherished they became family heirlooms, passed down through generations. Mended carefully, softened by years of use, they grew almost legendary within their lineages. Traders might offer generous sums for them, but these robes were rarely sold. And you can understand why. On a night when the temperature plummets far below freezing, giving one away wouldn't just be letting go of possession. It could be risking someone's life. Anthropologists still discuss whether these robes were used only for sleeping, or they doubled as daytime wear during deep winter. You suspect the answer is both, practicality shaped by need. Stepping out before dawn to fetch water or check on the horses would be unbearable without that cocoon of warmth wrapped around you now. Others settle under their own robes, each with their own quiet method. A woman near the fire tucks the hem beneath her feet, sealing out drafts from below. Across the lodge, a man folds his robe in half before wrapping it, creating a double layer across his chest and back. These aren't random choices. They're small, personal rituals refined over years of winter nights. The fire at the center has settled into glowing coals. It's light, low, but steady. You realize the robe is doing most of the work now. Your breath warms the fur near your face, creating a pocket of heat around your head and shoulders, a personal microclimate that moves with you as you shift or roll over. The silence is deep, broken only by the occasional soft pop from the coals or the muffled whisper of snowflakes landing on the hide walls. The robe molds to your body, responding to every subtle movement as though it's alive. Its weight is grounding, comforting. Not heavy in a burdensome way, but in a way that presses the outside cold out of your thoughts. In the corner, a child stirs in their sleep, murmuring softly. Their mother leans over without a word and pulls the robe more snugly around them. The child sighs and stills again. In that moment, you see it clearly. These coverings are more than tools. They're part of an unspoken language of care. To tuck someone in, to adjust their wrap just so, is to say without words, you are safe here. The robe's weight slows your breathing, softens your thoughts, and gently pulls you towards sleep. Even if the fire were to fade completely, you know you'd still have a real chance against the prairie's icy grip. Because the warmth isn't just in the flames. It's in the fur and the layers, in the generations of knowledge stitched into every seam. As sleep begins to take hold, a soft crackle draws you halfway back. It's not loud, more like the turning of a page, but in the stillness of a winter teepee. Even the smallest sounds carry meaning. Someone is moving, carefully, Quietly, they tend the fire while the rest of the camp rests beneath robes and hides. The figure crouches by the hearth like a shadow, feeding the coals with practiced hands. Thin sticks first to catch cleanly, then a thicker log to burn slowly through the night. There's no rush, no wasted motion. They know the balance. Too much wood, and smoke chokes the air or heat becomes stifling. Too little, and the cold creeps in. Ethnographers from the late 19th century noted that many families kept a special bundle of perfectly dry wood, wrapped in hide and stored inside, just for these midnight tending moments, so no one had to step into the freezing dark for fuel. And while scholars sometimes debate whether this nighttime duty was about maintaining warmth or preserving embers for morning, the truth feels obvious from where you lie. It's both. A teepee that wakes the glowing coals can be warm again in minutes, avoiding the long, difficult work of starting fire from scratch in sub-zero cold. As the flames revive, the whole space shifts. Faces half buried in fur glow with golden softness. Shadows ripple gently over the curved walls, breathing with the fire's rhythm. The fire tender sits back for a moment, warming their hands before slipping silently back to their bedding. The lodge settles once more into deep calm. Outside, the wind sighs through the cottonwoods. Inside, peace holds steady. You think of your own world, heat delivered by invisible machines, controlled with a tap or a dial. Here, warmth is visible, audible, tangible. It asks for your presence, your awareness, your care. And that care flows from one person to another, a quiet chain of responsibility that keeps everyone safe. As you drift again towards sleep, you realize that adding a log in the middle of the night isn't just a chore. It's a silent promise, a thread of trust woven between everyone in the lodge, holding firm against the cold that presses in from all sides. You wake again to a faint creak above you. At first, you think it's the poles shifting in the wind, but then you see hands reaching upward, steady, sure. A young man, still wrapped in a thick winter shirt, is adjusting the smoke flaps with a long, flexible pole. His movements are unhurried, precise. He nudges the ropes just enough to change the angle of the flaps, fine-tuning the opening at the teepee's peak. Tonight that opening is small, but not so tight that smoke lingers inside. In this deep cold, leaving it wide open will let precious warmth escape in seconds. Close it too much, and the air turns sharp with smoke, stinging eyes and throats. The answer lies in constant, subtle adjustments, like steering a ship through ever-changing winds. A tiny shift can mean the difference between comfort and distress. 19th century travelers often wrote with all about this skill, how members of a household would readjust the flaps multiple times a day, even in the dark, guided only by the feel of wind against hide. The poles aren't fixed. They're designed to be moved from inside, without stepping out into the cold. Over time, this becomes instinct, a kind of weather sense passed down through observation and practice. Some historians wonder whether flap tending was a shared skill or reserved for certain individuals. Watching this young man now, you suspect everyone learned the basics, but those with keener intuition became the quiet experts, the ones others trusted without question. His adjustment is small, almost imperceptible, yet you feel it immediately. The air near your face grows warmer. The smoke rises straighter, slipping cleanly into the night. He sets the pole against the wall and returns to his bedding without a sound. No one else stirs. They don't need to. They trust that someone is watching, listening, responding. That trust, quiet, deep, unspoken, is part of what makes this space safe. Outside, the wind's howl softens to a murmur, deflected by the careful positioning of flaps and hides. You pull your robe tighter, feeling the difference in the air. There's no set it and forget it here. Comfort is tended, adjusted, and earned minute by minute, breath by breath. The fire glows softly, casting amber light on the walls. A thin stream of smoke rises and flows out as cleanly as if following an invisible path. You realize then that this small act, adjusting a flap in the middle of the night, has been as vital to survival as building the fire itself. It's not a flourish. It's not convenience. It's centuries of knowledge, distilled into one graceful motion toward the sky. As you shift on your bedding, your hand brushes something solid beneath the hides. Curious, you lift a corner and find a smooth, dark stone, still radiating gentle warmth. It's not hot, just comfortably warm, placed there earlier after being heated in the fire. This practice is older than the tipi itself, using stones as slow-release heat sources through the coldest hours. And in that simple touch, a stone warmed by fire, tucked beneath furs, you feel the full depth of this wisdom. Not loud, not flashy, but steady, practical, loving. Every layer, every gesture, every silent adjustment is part of a whole, a way of living that doesn't fight the cold, but meets it with grace, skill, and deep, quiet care. Plains families, especially in the harshest months of winter, knew that fire alone wasn't enough. So they turned to the earth itself, warming smooth, dense stones in the central fire pit until their cores held heat like slow-burning coals. Using tongs made of green wood or carefully folded hides, they'd carry these stones to where people slept. Sometimes they'd tuck them beneath layers of bedding. Other times, they'd nestle them into shallow pits near cold feet. The heat would seep out slowly through the night, not fiercely but steadily, taking the sharp edge off the cold and keeping muscles from seizing in the deep freeze. This worked because certain stones, like basalt or granite, absorb and retain heat for hours once fully warmed. Field stones gathered from riverbeds or sun-baked ridges were perfect for the task. You run your fingertips over the one beneath your bedding now, and notice how its warmth feels different from the fire's. Gentler, more consistent, and without the faint sting of smoke. It's a quiet kind of heat, meant to endure, not impress. Elders sometimes tell stories of children curling around these stones, like small animals seeking shelter, the stones wrapped in scraps of fur to prevent burns. By morning, they'd be cool again, return quietly to the fire for another cycle. You imagine the rhythm of it, warming them at dusk, placing them with care, retrieving them at dawn. It's a routine so simple it's almost invisible, and yet, in the teeth of a prairie winter, that kind of invisible comfort could mean the difference between restful sleep and a night spent shivering. Some archaeologists admit how hard it is to trace this practice in the historical record. Stones leave no signature once they've cooled. They're just stones again. And because the act was so ordinary, so woven into daily life, it rarely made it into the journals of traders or explorers. But for those who lived through winters on the open plains, heating stones wasn't a quaint custom. It was as essential as tending the fire. You tuck the hide back over the stone and feel its warmth rise into your palms again. Small, humble, but deeply human. You glance around the lodge and realize the fire's glow doesn't reach every corner evenly. That's where these stones come in, creating little islands of warmth far from flames. Even if the air near the walls cools, the ground beneath you holds a quiet reservoir of heat. Across the space, you spot another stone, loosely wrapped in tan leather, resting near a sleeping child's knees. A parent stirs, checks its position with practiced hand, eyes barely open, and pulls the covering snug again. It's a gesture so natural it might go unnoticed, but it speaks volumes. Care embedded in motion, passed through generations. And in that moment, you understand, technology doesn't always mean wires or circuits. Sometimes it's knowing which stones hold heat longest, how to wrap them safely, when to rotate them through the fire. It's knowledge drawn from the land, refined by time and shared without fanfare. In its own way, it's as precise and effective as any modern invention, especially when survival depends on every degree of warmth. You close your eyes again, feeling the stored heat seep into your bones. Outside, the wind scrapes across the prairie like ice on skin. But here, warmth endures, not with fanfare, but with quiet persistence, held in stone, hide, and habit. As you settle deeper under your robe, you notice something else. The way people sleep isn't random. They're arranged in gentle arcs around the fire, like petals circling a flower. Feet generally point inward toward the flames. Heads rest against curved walls. This layout isn't just about space. It's about shared survival. Bodies close together create a subtle microclimate, their combined warmth softening the air, especially in those long, coldest hours before dawn. Early traders sometimes mistook this closeness for mere crowding, not realizing it was intentional. In truth, families space themselves carefully, close enough to share body heat, but not so close as to disturb one another's rest. In severe cold, those gaps shrank further. Children nestled between adults, elders placed in the warmest zones. You watch as two siblings share a single robe, their heads tucked together like birds in a nest. Nearby, an older man shifts, and the person beside him responds with a small, unconscious adjustment, keeping the circle intact without a word. There's a deeper layer here that outsiders often missed. Sleeping this close isn't just practical. It's an act of trust in a world without locks or walls. The people beside you in the dark are the same ones who watch your back by day. That silent bond is as protective as the hide above you. Anthropologists have debated whether certain spots in the sleeping circle held special status, whether leaders or hunters slept closer to the fire. Evidence suggests it varied by tribe and need, but one thing is clear. Placement wasn't haphazard. It was a living arrangement, responsive to the night's demands and the rhythms of the household. You shift slightly toward your nearest neighbor and feel the change instantly. The air softens, your robe feels cozier, your breath deepens. There's something profoundly human in this shared warmth. A reminder that long before thermostats and insulation, we survived by staying close. In the flickering firelight, you catch the slow blink of someone across the lodge, eyes half open, then closing again as their breathing evens out. All around you, a quiet tide of inhales and exhales rises and falls, a shared pulse beneath the wind's distant moan. It makes you think of modern life, where sleeping so near others feels unusual, even intrusive. Here, it's second nature. Privacy bends to practicality, and comfort grows from connection, not distance. You realize then that the warmth in this space isn't just from the fire or the hides. It's radiating from the people themselves. Each one a small, steady hearth in the vast cold of the prairie night. By the time pale morning light begins to seep through the hide walls, you notice something new about the teepee's covering. These hides feel denser, heavier, clearly meant for winter. Running your hand along the inside, you feel the thick undercoat beneath the longer outer fur, trapping air like nature's own insulation. Fur trade journals often noted how Plains families swapped teepee covers with the seasons. Summer hides were scraped thin, sometimes nearly hairless, for ventilation. But when frost arrived, those were carefully stored and replaced with thick, fur-lined winter covers. This wasn't a luxury. It was necessity, as vital as switching a wagon's wheels for snow. Changing the covers was no simple task. Families inspected every seam, reinforced lash points, and sometimes double hides at the base, where cold air pressed hardest. The labor was immense, but skipping it could mean frostbite or worse. These winter hides were also treated differently. Smoked longer to deepen their resistance to moisture and prevent stiffening in freezing temperatures. The process left them richly colored, a deep, earthy brown, and gave the lodge a signature scent, wood smoke, hide, and thyme. Anthropologists have remarked that a single winter panel could be so heavy it took 2 or 3 people to lift. Watching how they're lashed to the poles, with rawhide thongs that tighten as they dry, you see why precision matters. Every fold, every tie must hold firm against the wind. Elders tell stories of children helping during these seasonal changes, passing tools, holding thongs, standing on tiptoe to reach. It wasn't just work. It was a ritual, a family event marking the turn of the year. The smell of fresh hides and smoke meant winter had arrived, and the lodge was ready. The hides around you now are in their prime. Thick, supple, they're for catching the firelight with a faint sheen. They're not just shelter. They're armor, turning the teepee into a sealed capsule against the prairie's relentless wind. When a gust surges outside, the winter hides respond with a low, drum-like thud, solid, steady, reassuring. No flapping, no tearing, just the quiet certainty of a structure doing exactly what was meant to do. You lean back by the fire, feeling the difference in the air. The winter hides don't just block the cold. They deepen the silence, as if the world beyond has been gently pushed further away. Inside, all that remains is warmth, breath, and the quiet hum of people who knew how to live, not just survive, in the heart of winter, giving everyone inside the gift of stillness along with warmth. Later in the day, after the fire has been fed and the morning chores finished, you notice something unusual about where a few people are sitting. They aren't on the ground at all. Instead, they're perched slightly higher on a broad, low platform built from wood and packed earth, covered in thick hides. As you step closer, the difference is immediate. The air just a foot or two above the frozen ground feels noticeably warmer, and the creeping chill that rises from the earth no longer touches your feet. Ethnographers who documented winter camp life often noted these raised sitting and sleeping areas, though their form varied from community to community. Some were simple, just poles or brush laid over stones. Others were more refined, with solid frames and multiple layers of insulation, mats, hides, even dry grass tucked beneath. The purpose was clear and practical. Stay off the ground and you stay warmer. In sub-zero weather, the earth acts like a vast reservoir of cold, pulling heat from anything in direct contact with it. Here, the platform is built into the inner circle of the teepee, close enough to the fire for warmth, but elevated just enough to keep sleepers above the coldest layer of air. It also served a clever secondary purpose. The space underneath becomes a cool, protected storage area. Bundles of firewood, extra hides, baskets of dried food. All are tucked into the shadows below, where temperatures stay low enough to preserve provisions without freezing them solid. There's a thoughtful detail in the design. The hides covering the platform hang slightly over the edges, trapping a layer of still air underneath and blocking drafts from curling upward. When you sit down, the surface feels firm yet cushioned, and the furs respond instantly to your body heat, holding it close. Oral histories tell of elders being given these raised spots first, not just for warmth, but for ease. Rising from the floor in deep cold can be stiff, even painful, and the extra height made movement gentler. Children often slept there too, nestled in the safest, warmest zone, surrounded by adults who took the lower ground. Archaeologists still debate whether these platforms were permanent winter features or temporary, erected only during the coldest stretches of the season. It's easy to imagine them going up as soon as the snow settled deep and being taken down again in spring, when the earth no longer bit through hides and robes. From your place on the platform, the teepee feels subtly different. You can see the fire more clearly without leaning forward, and the air at face level is fresher, less dense with a thin, cold layer that hugs the ground. You also notice how the smoke rises cleanly from the fire pit, thinning as it moves toward the vent. That clean draft would be harder to appreciate if you were lying at floor level, where smoke tends to linger, below your feet. Someone reaches on the platform and pulls out a small bundle of dried herbs, tossing a pinch into the fire. The scent blooms instantly, sweet, earthy, warming, and the coals glow brighter in response. The heat reaches you even here, but the platform keeps the deep cold of the earth at bay. It's not a luxury. It's another quiet layer of survival strategy, one you wouldn't fully understand until you'd spent a night without it. As the day dims toward evening, you slide back onto hides and stretch out. The slight elevation gives you a quiet sense of security, as if the cold has to climb just a little further to reach you. And tonight, that small difference might be everything. By the time evening settles in, the teepee feels warmer than usual, and it takes you a moment to realize why. The fire is burning as always, but the air carries an extra depth of heat, layered with a rich, savory scent of something cooking. Someone is preparing a meal over the central flames, and the act is doing double duty, feeding the people and feeding the warmth. In winter, cooking was often timed to boost the lodge's heat. A pot of stew or roasting meat meant hotter, longer burning flames, and the radiating heat spread through the space, wrapping everyone in a deeper kind of comfort. Even the moisture from simmering food softened the dry, brittle air of deep cold, a small but meaningful relief. You watch as a woman stirs a large pot suspended from a tripod above the fire. Steam curls upward, carrying the aroma of bison, wild onions, and a hint of dried berries. Each time she leans in, the fire flares slightly, throwing more light and warmth into the lodge. The space becomes a living cocoon, fragrant, glowing, humming with quiet movement. Travelers' journals from centuries past often remarked how these cooking moments drew the household together. People gathered closer, sharing stories while they waited, their combined presence adding to the collective warmth. Eating wasn't just about nourishment. It was a vital part of keeping the lodge heated through the coldest hours. Some researchers have debated whether cooking during the deep night was intentional for warmth or simply necessity. But from the way the air feels now, rich, full, alive, you suspect it was both. Food warms the stomach, fire warms the skin, and togetherness warms the mind. The pot bubbles steadily, A ladle dips in, filling a wooden bowl. Steam rises thick enough to blur the firelight for a moment before dissolving into the air. When you take a sip, the heat floods through you, deeper than any blanket could reach, spreading from your chest out to your fingertips, flushing your cheeks like you've leaned too close to a hearth. In the quiet between words, you notice how this cooking fire behaves differently than the low overnight burn. It's brighter, occasional snaps sending out pulses of radiant heat. Even those on the outer edges of the teepee shift, loosening their robes to let the warmth touch them directly. When the meal ends, the pot is moved aside and the fire is coaxed back into a gentle, steady glow. But the lodge stays warmer longer than usual, the stones around the hearth still holding the extra heat from the evening's cooking. It's a seamless kind of efficiency, two essential needs met at once, with no fuel wasted. As you wrap yourself in your robe again, the lingering scent of stew blends with a steady warmth, and you realize tonight's comfort didn't come from the fire alone. It came from shared food, from the pot's glow, from the closeness of people leaning into the same circle of light, an experience woven into a single, sustaining memory. Later that night, you feel a subtle shift in weight at your feet. At first, it's just a faint pressure, then the unmistakable warmth of something alive curling into place. You glance down and see a dog settling across the end of your bedding, its thick fur dusted with melted snowflakes. It exhales once, a deep, contented sigh, and goes still. In winter lodges across the plains, dogs were more than companions or hunters. They were living heat sources, reliable, renewable, and generous without asking for anything in return. Historical accounts describe families welcoming their dogs inside on the coldest nights, letting them sleep at the foot of bedding or tucked between layers of robes. Some dogs even had favorite spots, returning to the same place night after night, as if it were their own bed. This wasn't just sentiment. A medium-sized dog can raise the temperature around his body by several degrees, enough in the dead of a prairie night to make a real difference. And the arrangement worked both ways. The dog gained the fire's warmth, and you gained the steady, living heat of its body. You shift your feet slightly under your robe and feel that warmth rise through the layers. The dog stirs but doesn't move away. Instead, it presses its flank more firmly against your legs, tucking in like a living hot water bottle. Elders have shared how dogs seem to sense the coldest nights, curling tighter, tucking their noses under their tails, and fitting themselves into the crook of a sleeper's body without waking them. In return, they'd wake to frost-free fur, ready to guard or work come morning. Scholars of indigenous lifeways have debated whether this bond was purely practical or also deeply symbolic. The truth, it seems, is both. Dogs were part of the household, not separate, but woven into its rhythm of warmth, food, and protection. In return, they offered presence, a quiet reminder that survival was never a solo act. You watch another dog pad softly around the fire, circle twice, then drop down beside a child bedding. The child shifts in sleep, nestling closer. The dog stays alert for a breath, ears flicking toward the rustle of wind at the door flap, before resting its head on its paws. When animals are part of the lodge, the quiet deepens. Their breathing folds into the human rhythm, creating a shared tide of warmth and rest. Their heat isn't dramatic like fire. It's steady, living, and you only notice its value when it's gone. You let your breath slow to match the dog at your feet, the shared warmth drawing you deeper into rest. Outside, the prairie night stretches vast and frozen. But here, beneath layers of fur, some tanned, some alive, you're part of a circle of warmth that includes not just people, but the whole living household. By the next afternoon, you notice something unusual just outside the lodge, an extra wall of hides and brush standing a short distance from the teepee. At first glance, it looks like a second shelter. But it's not. It's a windbreak, carefully erected to block the prevailing gusts before they ever reach the lodge. The gap between the windbreak and the teepee creates a still zone, a buffer where the worst of the cold is deflected upward and over the camp. It's yet another layer in this quiet architecture of survival, where every element, from the smoke hole to the sleeping dog to the stones beneath the hides, works together to turn raw winter into something endurable, even intimate. And in that harmony, you find not just shelter, but a kind of wisdom. That warmth isn't a single thing you build or buy. It's a web of choices, care, and connection woven patiently across generations. But when you step out to inspect it, you realize the structure isn't another shelter at all. It's a windbreak, positioned just far enough from the teepee to intercept the prevailing gusts before they ever reach the lodge's walls. Winter wind on the plains doesn't just chill, it scours. It slips through seams, presses against hides, and siphons heat with relentless patience. By placing a barrier between the open prairie and the teepee, the people here create a calmer pocket of air, a buffer zone where the wind loses its bite before it even arrives. This outer shield means fewer drafts sneaking in at ground level and a more stable, even temperature inside. 19th century observers sometimes mention these secondary structures, though many dismiss them as makeshift or temporary. In truth, they were strategic. They didn't need to be grand. Sometimes just a row of stacked brush, driftwood, or snow-packed earth, but their effect was profound. Even a partial block could turn a restless, drafty night into one of deep, uninterrupted warmth. The windbreak before you has been built with care. Its base is a low, hardened mound of snow, smooth and compacted to resist erosion. Against it, willow branches are woven tightly together like living lattice, then reinforced with old hide panels. Too worn to serve as teepee coverings anymore, but still strong enough to stand against the wind. The whole structure curves gently, mirroring the arc of the teepee behind it, so gusts are deflected outward rather than funneled in. There's a rhythm to how this defense was assembled. First, the camp was placed in a naturally sheltered hollow, like the one you've already noticed, nestled between rises and cottonwoods. Then, as an extra safeguard against a harsh season, these man-made barriers were added, especially for teepees most exposed to the wind. It's a layered system. The land offers its first gift of shelter, the windbreak adds a second, and the teepee itself provides a final, intimate layer of protection. Elders speak of how, in heavy storms, snow is deliberately piled higher against these outer walls, turning them into even more effective shields. Others recall times when sudden weather forced quick improvisation, saddle blankets draped between poles, sled frames repurposed into temporary screens. Flexibility was as vital as strength. You step behind the barrier and feel the immediate shift. The wind noise drops. Your hair stops whipping across your face. The air no longer stings. It simply is. Standing in the space between the windbreak and the teepee feels like stepping into a quiet hallway, sheltered from the vastness beyond. From an anthropological view, this also reveals a deeper ethic. Nothing was wasted. Worn hides, broken poles, leftover branches, all found new purpose. In a winter camp, every material earned multiple lifetimes before it was finally laid to rest. When you step back inside the lodge, you notice something subtle. The entrance flap barely trembles, though the wind outside still howls. The windbreak is doing its work, letting those within rest in steady, undisturbed warmth. It's another quiet thread in the web of survival, not one grand solution, but many small, thoughtful ones woven together until even the wind's sharpest teeth are dulled. That night, as the fire settles into a low, amber glow, you notice no one rushes to undress for bed. Instead, people loosen belts, shed only their outermost layers, and pull their sleeping robes right over the clothes they've worn all day. It's a deliberate layering strategy, one that keeps warmth sealed in and cold air out, even inside the lodge. On the plains in winter, layers weren't just for travel. They extended through the night. Before cotton or wool arrived, people relied on buckskin shirts, leggings, and hide robes, each serving a purpose. The inner layer wicking moisture away from the skin. The middle trapped air for insulation. The outer robe, thick fur-lined, acted like a personal teepee, holding everything in. Early travelers sometimes express surprise that people didn't change into sleeping clothes. But from this vantage, it makes perfect sense. Stripping bare, even for minutes, in sub-zero cold invites a dangerous chill. By sleeping in layers, the heat built up through the day flows seamlessly into the night. You shift under your own coverings and feel the difference. The robe over your layered clothes creates a snug, almost sealed microclimate. There's no shock of cold on bare skin, no icy draft slipping through gaps. Elders tell how winter garments were adapted for sleep. Leggings loosened for comfort, shirt ties undone at the neck for easier breathing, but otherwise left in place. That way, If someone needed to step outside in the night to check animals, fetch water, or tend to fire, they could move quickly without fumbling in the dark. Anthropologists also note that this practice helped preserve the sleeping robes, with a layer between skin and fur. Less body oil transferred to the hides, keeping them pliable and less prone to stiffening over time. Around you, others settle in with quiet precision. A man wraps a spare scarf around his head and neck before lying down. A woman near the wall adjusts her leggings so the fur faces inward. Children are already cocooned, their faces barely visible beneath folds of hide. No one shivers. No one even glances toward the cold outside. It's simply not welcome here. The fire pops softly. The air is warm enough that you could almost forget it's winter until a gust outside rattles the hides, a fleeting reminder of the world beyond. You tuck your layers tighter, comforted by the knowledge that even if the fire dims before dawn, the warmth you've gathered will stay with you. Here, clothing isn't just worn, it's part of the architecture of survival. Before dawn, a faint orange halo glows beneath the embers. The fire seems asleep, but it's still alive, ready to awaken with the slightest coaxing. A man rises quietly, kneels by the hearth, and brushes away a thin layer of ash, revealing a nest of coals banked carefully the night before. This isn't luck. It's skill, honed over generations. Banking the fire was a nightly ritual in winter tipis. Rather than letting flames burn out completely, the fuel was allowed to collapse into glowing embers, then covered with a fine layer of ash. This ash blanket slowed oxygen flow, preserving heat without smothering the coals. The result? A steady bed of warmth that could last for hours, untouched. Early 20th century ethnographers noted how this practice saved immense effort. Without banked embers, starting a fire on a frozen morning meant numb fingers, damp kindling, and the slow, frustrating work of coaxing sparks to flame. With them, you simply uncovered the coals, fed them a few twigs, and within minutes warmth returned. The man at the hearth moves with practiced stillness. He stirs the embers just enough to let them breathe, then lays thin sticks across them. They catch with a soft hiss, and soon the teepee fills with gentle, rising heat. The others sleep on, undisturbed. Elders remember teaching children this art as soon as they were trusted with fire. How too much ash would extinguish the coals. Too little would let them flare and waste fuel. Archaeologists have found ash layers at ancient campsites that echo this same technique, used for centuries. It's a quiet technology, no tools, just knowledge passed hand to hand, breath to breath. As the fire grows, the hide walls warm to a deeper gold, and the air shifts from cool to comfortably mild. You feel it even from your bedding, a slow wave of heat rising along your robe, sinking into your bones. By the time the others stir, the lodge will already be welcoming, the night's cold held firmly at the door. And in that, you sense something deeper. Banking the fire isn't just about convenience. It's about continuity. The flame you see now is the same one that burned last night, part of an unbroken line of warmth stretching back through countless winters. In a world where survival hinges on balance, between vigilance and rest, effort and ease, that steady thread of heat is as reassuring as any wall or roof. As sunrise paints the horizon, voices rise softly in the lodge. The wind has shifted, carrying a sharper edge, and talk turns to whether the camp should move. On the plains, this isn't a light decision. Relocating in deep winter could mean trading comfort for hardship, or finding a better shelter before the worst arrives. Winter camps were chosen with deep intention. River valleys, wooded draws, places where the land itself offered windbreaks and fuel. But if conditions change, if the wind turned cruel, if game moved on, the entire village could shift, even through snow. Movement wasn't disruption. It was another form of wisdom, another way of listening to the land and responding with grace. And in every choice, from the curve of a windbreak to the layers on a sleeper's back, you see the same truth. Survival here wasn't about fighting the cold. It was about weaving a world where warmth could endure quietly, steadily, night after night, season after season. This wasn't wanderlust. It was strategy, a deeply practiced response to shifting weather, dwindling resources, and the rhythms of the land itself. You picture the process as it's been passed down in stories. the teepee carefully taken apart, its hides folded into thick, manageable bundles, poles stacked and lashed together, everything loaded onto travois, those elegant, triangular sleds pulled by dogs or horses, ready to move at a moment's notice. Even the fire wasn't left behind. From the bed of coals, the hottest embers would be scooped up, wrapped in damp bark, or tucked into ash-lined containers, carried like a living seed to the next camp. Lighting the new hearth from the old wasn't just practical, it was symbolic. It wove one night's warmth into the next, creating an unbroken thread of heat across miles of frozen prairie. People would leave at first light and aim to arrive before dusk, giving just enough time to raise the lodges before the cold clamped down again. The route wasn't chosen on a whim. Scouts went ahead, reading the land like a map written in snow and wind. They checked for deep drifts that could stall the dogs, tested frozen river ice for thickness, and listened to how the wind moved through trees. A shift of just a few miles could mean the difference between a night of rest and one spent shivering as gusts tore at the seams. Historians sometimes note that these winter moves weren't always about escaping bad weather. Sometimes they were tactical, bringing the camp closer to bison herds, a reliable water source, or a rendezvous with trading partners. But no matter the reason, the outcome was the same. A teepee in a better spot was easier to warm, easier to protect, easier to live in. Inside the lodge now, someone mentions a stand of evergreens a day's ride away, their branches heavy with snow. The way he says it, you hear the subtext, shelter and fuel. Another woman wonders about a bend in the river that might block the northwest wind. No one says if they'll move, only when. Timing is the only question. You realize then that mobility is built into the very architecture of warmth here. The teepee isn't just insulated, it's designed to travel. It's a home that doesn't wait for the storm to pass. It walks toward calmer ground. This is a different kind of resilience, not brute endurance, but the wisdom to change your surroundings when staying put no longer serves life. Later, as the wind presses harder against the hides, you think about how modern life has softened this instinct. Most people now live in fixed structures, weathering storms where they stand, rarely considering that sometimes the best shelter is a new place altogether. But here, the walls themselves are ready to move. They don't defend against the land, they respond to it. And in that flexibility, the entire prairie becomes a potential hearth. By morning, pale light filters through the smoke-darkened hides. The fire has been fed, sending thin ribbons of smoke cleanly through the vent. But the talk isn't about breakfast or chores. It's about the wind. It's shifted overnight, coming sharp from the northwest, hissing through the grass like a warning. That subtle change is enough to stir plans. Relocating in winter is never done lightly, but it's always an option, because survival here isn't just about good design. It's about good placement. Even the most perfectly built teepee can't hold warmth if the wind tunnels through camp, if the water freezes solid, or if game moves beyond reach. When those signs appear, the people move. You listen as voices weave through memory and practicality. An elder recalls a winter they stayed too long in a valley, and the river froze so hard they couldn't break through for water. Another speaks of moving just 2 miles into a stand of cottonwoods, and how the night's warmth felt like stepping from deep winter into a gentler season. The seasonal rhythm is deliberate. Fall camps settle into protected hollows, behind hills, near rivers, among trees, where wind is broken before it arrives. Water and wood are close, but these aren't fortresses. They're way stations, chosen with the understanding that if conditions turn, the lodge will rise again elsewhere. You picture morning of move. Before dawn, people folding hide with practiced hands, tying bundles with rawhide thongs, stacking poles for the travois. Supplies are packed for access. No one wants to unpack everything only to repack at sunset. And always, the embers travel with them, wrapped and protected. So the next fire begins not from cold stone, but from living warmth. Scouts go ahead, eyes and ears sharp. They read snowdrifts, test ice, watch how clouds gather. Some press their ears to tree trunks, listening for the hum of wind in the branches, a sound that reveals which valleys will be quiet, which slopes will howl all night. And always, they track the herds. Because shelter matters, but so does food, and hunger can steal warmth faster than any draft. Back in the lodge, the conversation flows calmly, but beneath it runs a current of readiness. A woman mentions evergreens beyond a low ridge, where snow lies deep but undisturbed. Another suggests a river bend that might turn the wind. There's no panic, just preparation. This is life tuned to the land signals. Anthropologists have long noted that mobility was woven into every aspect of plains life, even the teepee's design. Its conical frame isn't just stable. It's quick to raise, quick to strike, built for rhythm, not permanence. Staying too long in one place, especially in winter, goes against the logic of the whole system. You imagine the move itself, a quiet procession across the white expanse. Horses and dogs pulling loads, the old camp dissolving behind them into snow and wind. By dusk, poles rise again in a new hollow. Hides are stretched. Smoke curls into a new patch of sky. The same robes, the same bedding, but the air is different. Still, gentler, less hostile. And then it strikes you. Warmth here isn't only about fire, furs, or flaps. It's also about place. Knowing when the current shelter has given all it can, and when it's time to let your home walk toward better odds. By the time the decision is made, the sky has turned a heavy gray, the kind that promises more snow. Outside, you notice drifts building against the windbreaks and around the base of the teepees. At first, you think of them as obstacles, something to shovel away. But then you remember, snow, used wisely, is an ally. It seems counterintuitive. How can frozen water keep you warm? But snow is full of trapped air, and air is insulation. When packed tightly along the lower edge of the teepee, it seals the gap between hide and ground, blocking the drafts that steal heat most efficiently. You watch as two young men step out with wooden shovels, pushing snow toward a neighbor's lodge. They pack it firm, stomp it smooth, shaping it so the wind slides over instead of tearing it loose. The work is rhythmic, almost meditative, and the effect inside will be immediate. 19th century travelers sometimes mention this practice, though a few mistook it for mere tidiness or storm anchoring. In truth, it was adaptive and intelligent. If a warm spell came, the snow could be cleared to let the lodge breathe. If the cold deepened, more could be added, until the base looked like a snow fort, seamless and strong. An elder once called snow winter's gift to the builder, free, abundant, perfectly suited. After a fresh fall, children would be sent to gather clean drifts, turning the task into play as they stuffed snow into tiny gaps. Soon, the teepee would seem to grow from the earth itself, white melting into tan, wind into stillness, cold into comfort. And in that moment, you understand, survival here wasn't about resisting winter. It was about partnering with it, using its own elements, snow, wind, hide, stone, to create pockets of warmth so deep, so quiet, they felt like magic. But it wasn't magic. It was knowledge, care, and a way of living that moved with the world rather than against it. There's also a certain quietness that settles in once snow is packed against the walls. You've already felt how the hides soften the world outside, but with snow layered around the base, the silence deepens. The wind's sharp edge dulls to a low hum. Footsteps beyond the lodge sound distant, muffled, as if wrapped in wool. It's more than insulation. It's a kind of hush that calms the mind as much as it shields the body. Archaeologists studying old winter camps have found traces of this practice in the earth itself, subtle discolorations, compacted soil patterns where snow once hugged the base of teepees, preserving ghostly outlines long after the hides were gone. That evidence speaks to how widespread, how deeply rooted this knowledge was across the plains, passed down not in books, but in hands and habits. When you duck back inside, the difference is immediate. The air near the floor is still. No more sneaking drafts curling under the hides. The fire's warmth lingers longer between tending, and even your feet feel less urgency to burrow deeper into your robes. Outside, snow keeps falling, gently covering the work just done. By morning, the base of the teepee will be half buried, the seal tighter, the shelter stronger. In most places, heavy snow is a hardship. Here, it becomes part of the architecture, a living wall in the quiet war against the cold. That evening, After the snowbank is smooth and the fire banked low, another kind of warmth settles in. Not the kind you feel on your skin, but the kind that lives in glances and voices, in the easy rhythm of shared presence. Someone clears their throat, shifts on their bedding, begins a story, part memory, part mischief, part teaching. The children lean forward, faces glowing in the firelight. Adults smile in the shadows, their eyes soft with recognition. The tale swells with gentle exaggeration, a horse outrunning the wind, a storm so vast it swallows the moon. Laughter ripples through the lodge, shoulders relax, bodies shift closer without thought. And in that closeness, warmth multiplies, not just body heat, but something deeper, something unmeasurable. Early ethnographers often recorded these winter storytelling hours as mere entertainment, but they missed the point. In a world where cold never sleeps, keeping spirits light was survival. A good story could ease hunger, quiet fear, turn the howl of wind into background noise. It reminded everyone, storms pass, seasons turn, warmth returns. Elders say winter was when the mind sharpened. Less to do outside meant more time to listen, remember, imagine. Children heard the same stories again and again, each telling weaving another thread into the fabric of who they were. These tales carried practical knowledge, how to read snowdrifts, track herds without leaving a trace, but also hope. They stitched resilience into the night. And it wasn't just for the young. Everyone listens. Everyone laughs at the familiar punchlines. Everyone feels that quiet lift when the hero finds their way home through the blizzard. Outside, the wind still pushes, but its voice is distant now, softened by hide, snow, and human voices. The air inside grows almost festive. A pot of tea passes hand to hand. Dried berries are shared from a small bundle. Even the dogs by the door sigh and settle deeper, lulled by the cadence of words. You realize this atmosphere isn't accidental. The warmth of spirit is tended here as carefully as a fire. A teepee in winter isn't just a shelter. It's a vessel for connection, where stories become as vital as furs and laughter as necessary as fuel. Tonight, that warmth is enough to make you forget, just for a while, that winter even exists. By morning, the lodge carries a faint scent of frost, the door flap lifted briefly for early chores. Outside, the wind still roams restless, but the teepee stands firm. And you're reminded again, its greatest strength isn't just that it keeps you warm, it's that it can move. This is a home built to travel, to fold into bundles and follow the needs of its people. Men step outside to check the poles, scanning the lashings where the tall lodge poles cross overhead. Days of wind have tested them, yet nothing has loosened. These poles, often lodgepole pine, are chosen for both strength and flexibility, long enough to bear the weight of winter hides without sagging. And crucially, they're designed to be carried, stacked, lashed, hauled by dog or horse to a new site when the land shifts beneath you. Early traders and scouts often wrote with grudging awe about how quickly a whole village could vanish. Dozens of teepees struck in under an hour, reduced to orderly bundles. The camper raced like a breath on glass. This wasn't improvisation. It was precision, practiced over generations. In deep winter, that portability isn't convenience. It's strategy. If firewood runs low, if snow blocks paths, if the herds move, staying put means surrender. Moving means staying ahead. Elders tell of families packing so efficiently that every item had its place. Hides folded in would protect the fur, poles sorted by length, rawhide thongs coiled and ready. Children roll bedding, tuck tools into hide folds, each movement part of a quiet, practiced dance. Scholars of indigenous architecture note that this mobility represents a kind of freedom rarely found in settled life. Your home isn't a fixed point on a map. It's a companion, responsive and ready. It goes where you go, adapting to new winds, new waters, new chances. Architecture and life aren't separate here. They're one. Sitting by the fire, you wonder what it would feel like in your own world. If the cold or storm became too much, you wouldn't be trapped in walls that hold the chill as tightly as they hold you. You could lift your home, carry your hearth, and seek a new hollow where the wind sighs instead of screams. The thought is quiet, but deeply comforting. A teepee in winter isn't just about enduring where you are. It's about knowing warmth can be pursued. that the flame can travel. And in a world ruled by ice and wind, that knowledge might be the most powerful survival tool of all. Later that day, you notice a quiet flow between lodges, people moving with purpose, arms full, extra hides, sacks of dried meat, bundles of wood. At first, it seems like casual visiting, but then you see the pattern. Resources are being shared, especially with families who might be running thin. In a winter camp, generosity isn't kindness. It's infrastructure, because survival here is collective. If one fire dies, if one household runs out of fuel, the cold doesn't stay contained. It spreads through illness, exhaustion, despair. Sharing isn't charity. It's mutual insurance. Historical observers often saw the exchanges, but missed their deeper logic. These weren't trades. They were threads in a web of care. A thick robe moves from one family to another. When a baby is born, a neighbor leaves kindling at the flap. When someone falls ill, food appears without fanfare. No debts are kept. No thanks are demanded. Just a quiet understanding that the circle holds everyone. And one day, you'll be the one reaching out, or the one being reached for. There are stories of entire camps rearranging their sleeping circles during hard times, shifting people into the warmest tipis, layering every spare hide over those most at risk, blurring the line between my home and ours. In those moments, survival wasn't individual. It was woven. And it wasn't just goods that were shared. Skills flowed freely, too. A man known for his skill with smoke flaps might walk the camp before a storm, adjusting each one. A woman with a knack for mending hides would take in torn robes from neighboring lodges. Knowledge moved as quietly as the snow, nourishing the whole. In this way, the teepee becomes more than shelter. It becomes a node in a living network of resilience. And the warmth inside, it's not just from fire, fur, or stone. It's from the unspoken promise that no one faces the cold alone. While an experienced fire tender might bank embers for a neighbor away on a hunt, small acts like these, multiplied across a whole camp, could mean the difference between enduring a cold snap with grace or suffering through it in fear. As you sit near the fire, a woman enters holding a folded hide. Without ceremony, she lays it beside the hearth and explains softly that it's for another lodge where a child has been coughing through the night. Within minutes, 2 others arrive, arms full of dried berries, strips of smoked meat, each offering quietly set aside for the same household. No speeches, no fanfare. No one even seems to notice they're doing anything remarkable. And that's when it hits you. This quiet network of care is as vital as the hides overhead or the fire at your feet. Warmth here isn't just fur and flame. It's a shared commitment, a living system sustained by people who know, deep in their bones, that on the winter prairie, no one survives alone. Outside, the wind sharpens again, tapping at the hides like a reminder that it's still waiting, patient, relentless. But inside, the simple act of giving creates a kind of warmth that goes deeper than heat. It's the warmth of connection, of belonging, of knowing that if your fire ever burned too low, someone would be at your door before the cold could take hold. That night, as the fire settles into a bed of glowing coals, you notice a woman gently place a large bundle beside her bedding. She unwraps it with practiced hands, revealing a small boy sleeping so deeply his breath barely stirs the fur near his mouth. He's wrapped like something precious, layer upon layer of hides, furs, and soft cloth, sealed against every possible draft. Caring for children in winter, here is both science and love. The innermost layer is supple deer-hide, soft, breathable, wicking moisture away from delicate skin. Over that comes thick fur, rabbit, beaver, or the plush undercoat of buffalo, snug but not tight. Then an outer shell, dense enough to block any stray chill. The whole bundle is light enough to carry, yet heavy with stored warmth that lasts long into the night. 19th century observers sometimes describe children so well wrapped they look like parcels being passed from lodge to lodge, never once exposed to the open air. What they didn't always understand was how intentional every fold was. This wasn't just about heat. It was about keeping a child's temperature steady, avoiding the dangerous fluctuations that make young bodies vulnerable to illness in deep cold. You watch as a woman tucks a strip of fur around the boy's head, leaving his face uncovered so he breathes fresh air. The rest of him is encased in a cocoon so effective he'd stay safe for hours. even if the fire went out. Nearby, another child sleeps pressed against an older sibling, their breathing synced in quiet rhythm. Elders recall that on the coldest nights, children were placed at the very center of the lodge, closest to fire's residual heat, with adults forming a living wall around them. Some families even used child-sized robes so perfectly fitted they became heirlooms, handed down for generations, still carrying the faint, comforting scent of wood smoke from winters long past. Anthropologists have debated whether bundling or direct body contact was more effective for warmth. The truth? Both were used, bundling for sustained, deep sleep, body heat for quick warming after coming in from the cold. Like everything else here, the methods work together, part of a seamless whole. The woman checks the boy's wrapping without waking him, her fingers gliding over the outer layer to ensure no gaps have opened. It's a silent skill, learned not from books, but from years of watching, helping, and doing. Outside, wind combs through snowbanks. But inside, the boy sleeps on safe, steady, held in a world of warmth crafted with the same care given to the Tipi's poles, the fire's coals, and the hands that tend them both. By midday, the lodge fills with a rich, savory scent of fat, sizzling in a pot over fire. At first, you think it's just another meal. But then someone mentions how vital this food is in winter. Here, the diet shifts with the season. Meals aren't just about flavor. They're fuel for the body's internal furnace. High-fat, high-protein foods like buffalo meat, bone marrow, and pemmican, dense mixtures of rendered fat, dried meat, and berries, become winter staples. They're slow to digest, packed with energy, and designed to sustain core warmth through long, freezing nights. Even the hot broth served with meals does double duty, warming from within and replacing moisture lost to dry winter air. Early explorers often remarked, sometimes with surprise, on the amount of fat consumed during plains winters. They rarely grasped the science. In extreme cold, the body burns calories far faster just to stay warm. Lean meat alone wouldn't cut it. It could even weaken you. But fat is survival. You watch as a cook spoons thick stew into a wooden bowl, its surface glistening. She offers it to an elder, who sips slowly. Across the fire, a young man taps a marrow bone until its rich center slides free. He drops it into the pot, where it melts into broth, adding both flavor and life-sustaining fat. There are quiet rituals here, too. In some families, the first marrow goes to children or elders. In others, a special portion is saved for the hunter, a gesture of gratitude, a reminder of the chain of care that brought this meal to fire. Scholars have debated whether this high-fat diet was purely practical or also rooted in tradition. But sitting here, warmth spreading from your belly to your fingertips, you realize the distinction doesn't matter. The food is doing its job, and in a place where cold never sleeps, that's everything. After eating, the warmth lingers, not just in your core, but in your limbs, your thoughts, the very air around you. The robe on your shoulders feels heavier in the best way. The lodge feels softer, kinder. You understand now, this isn't just about surviving winter. It's about meeting it with strength, wisdom, and grace. The next time you step outside, the cold bites the inside of your nose. But something else catches your attention. A faint, sweet, smoky scent clinging to the teepee's outer walls. You run your fingers along the hide and notice it's darker, smoother, richer than untreated leather. This isn't just soot from the fire inside. It's the result of smoke curing, a deliberate tanning process that transforms rawhide into something far more resilient. The hides are suspended over a low, smoldering fire, often fed with specific woods or grasses chosen for quality of their smoke, and left for hours, sometimes days, until the vapors penetrate deep into the fibers. Smoke curing does more than deepen the color. It makes the hide water-resistant, less prone to stiffening in freezing weather, and, critically, far less likely to burn if an ember from the hearth lands on it. A spark that might punch a hole through dry hide might only leave a faint mark on cured leather. 19th century traders noted how whole families took part in this work. One tending the smoke pit, another adjusting hides for even exposure, others threading rawhide through grommets to prevent warping. In winter, this was often done under temporary shelters or inside larger lodges, ensuring the process continued even in snow or wind. Because in deep cold, A fire is both lifeline and risk. One errant spark could mean disaster. But with smoke-cured hides, the lodge becomes not just a shelter, but a shield. Over time, the hides also develop a kind of weatherproof skin, able to shed melting snow or light rain before it can freeze hard against the surface. Some historians wonder whether this process also carried spiritual meaning. Elders tell of using sage or sweetgrass in the smoke, not just for preservation, but to bless the lodge, to invite protection. In that light, smoke curing becomes more than technique. It's a ritual, a way of weaving care, memory, and prayer into the very walls that hold you. And so, in every layer, from the snowbank at the base to the stories shared by firelight, from the child's cocoon to the marrow-rich stew, warmth on the winter prairie is never just physical. It's a tapestry of knowledge, generosity, and deep, quiet love stitched together across generations, not to conquer the cold, but to live with it, through it, and beyond it. Back inside, you look up at the sloping walls and realize that every inch of that surface has been handled, inspected, and cared for by someone in the camp. These hides aren't just coverings. They're living parts of the lodge's memory. Each bears the echo of hunts, the imprint of hands that scraped, stretched, and stitched it, and the quiet endurance of winters past. You press your palm lightly to the wall and feel its subtle give, the resilience of hide that breathes with the wind, yet holds warmth like a promise. When you pull your hand away, the faint, smoky scent lingers on your skin. It's not just from tonight's fire. It's woven into the very fibers of the home, layer upon layer of hard smoke, wood smoke, the breath of generations. In this place, even the air you breathe is part of the shelter. Smoke isn't waste. It's preservation. It's history. It's as essential to the tipi as the poles that hold it upright. Night falls under a pale full moon. The lodge settles into its quiet rhythm, soft breaths, the gentle pop of coals, when you hear it, the soft crunch of footsteps in the snow outside. A moment later, the door flap lifts and a man steps in, brushing snow from his shoulders. He's one of the night watchers, a role as much about warmth as it is about safety. In winter camps, the night was never left entirely unattended. Someone always stayed awake, moving between lodges, checking that the glow of each hearth was steady through the smoke hole, listening for shifts in the wind, watching for anything out of place. These rounds weren't rigid or militaristic. They were calm, steady, woven into the fabric of the night, like a lullaby with purpose, without a word. The man kneels by the fire, adds a few dry sticks, and coaxes the embers back to life. Heat rises again, gentle and sure, and the teepee seems to sigh in relief. In the corner, a dog lifts its head, ears twitching. The man gives a quiet pat before slipping back out, on to the next lodge, where another family will wake to a warm hearth, never knowing who kept their fire alive. Early fur traders wrote of these night watches, often framing them as defenses against raids or predators. What they missed was their deeper function, warmth maintenance. A fire left too low could chill bedding enough to stir children from sleep, or worse, let cold seep into vulnerable corners. On the bitterest nights, watchers would linger longer, adjusting a smoke flap, tamping snow against a drafty seam, adding an extra log if someone was ill or elderly. These acts weren't demanded or announced. They were simply done and deeply valued. Historians still debate whether these rounds were formally assigned or just a habit of light sleepers and early risers. The truth is likely both. Some nights planned, others spontaneous. What mattered was that someone was always awake, ensuring the cold never gained a foothold. You think of your own world, where thermostats hum unseen through the night, keeping temperature steady without human touch. Here, warmth is alive. It must be tended, listened to, guarded. Even in the deepest hours of sleep, the watchers are its keepers, not just the flames, but a quiet thread of safety that binds the whole camp together. The man's footsteps fade into the snow, swallowed by the silvered stillness. You picture him moving among the other lodges, his breath clouding in the moonlight, his shadow gliding over drifts. By the time he completes his circuit, every fire will be steady, every windbreak firm, and the camp will sleep on, unaware of the silent vigilance that kept the cold at bay. By the next afternoon, the wind has eased. With it comes a lull, a rare pause in the constant negotiation with cold. Inside the lodge, the mood shifts, still purposeful, but softer, more spacious. An elder begins to speak, not with urgency, but with the slow, steady cadence of teaching. The subject? Winter itself, not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a presence to be understood, read, respected. In many winter camps, these moments were as vital as banking the fire or packing snow around the base. Knowledge wasn't delivered in lectures, but in stories that felt like conversation. The elder explains how the wind's voice tells the coming weather. A high, thin whistle means deeper cold by nightfall. A low hum suggests calm will hold. He describes how ice forms differently on sagebrush versus cottonwood, and what that reveals about moisture in the air. Early missionaries and explorers noted these lessons in passing, often dismissing them as folklore. But to the people here, they were survival tools, mental warmth to match the physical kind. He recalls a winter when snow came early and stayed deep. Families survived not just because their teepees were tight and their fires steady, but because they knew when to hunt, when to stay sheltered, when to move. They listened for the distant thunder of bison hooves on frozen ground, watched how ravens rode the wind toward food, noticed how frost clung to horse hides at dawn. Each detail, a thread, together, a net that caught the future before it arrived. Anthropologists debate whether this was formal education. Sitting here, you see there's no line. Wisdom is layered into daily life, repeated until it lives not just in memory, but in hands, eyes, instincts. Young listeners lean in, asking about snowpack depth, bird signs before storms. The elder answers patiently, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with silence, letting the questioner find their own understanding. The fire crackles between sentences, a soft counterpoint to the lesson. And in that stillness, you realize part of what keeps people warm here is readiness of mind. When you can read the signs, you prepare. Seal the hides tighter, store wood closer, wrap the children deeper. The warmth you feel at night begins in these daylight hours, with the ability to meet the cold before it arrives. Outside, the sky softens to winter dusk, pale pink bleeding into violet. Inside, the lesson ends not with fanfare, but with someone ladling hot broth and handing it to the elder. Knowledge has been shared. The fire still burns. For another night, both body and mind are well fed. As dusk deepens, a quiet ripple moves through the lodge. Someone adjusts their bedding. Another shifts the firewood. Soon, you see it. Everyone is preparing for a sudden drop in temperature, not because anyone said so, but because they all felt it. A faint shift in the wind's pitch, the way smoke lingers lower before finding the vent. Instantly, the lodge responds. Two people rise with poles, tightening the smoke flaps against the breeze. Someone tucks an extra strip of hide along the door's bottom edge. A child packs snow into a thin spot at the base, smoothing it with mittened hands before darting back inside. Historians sometimes call this tightening the lodge, but the phrase barely captures it. Depending on the tribe and conditions, it might mean draping extra robes over walls, pulling the bedding circle closer to fire, or slipping warm stones back under hides. It's instinctive, communal. No one is told what to do. They simply do it. A woman wraps a heavy buffalo robe around an elder near the wall. A man lays a strip of hide over a gap between bedding rolls, blocking cold air from rising. In the corner, someone tests a stone's warmth before tucking it under a child's feet. Some scholars debate whether these actions are about comfort or preventing hypothermia. Here, the distinction vanishes. The point is, no one waits for the cold to settle in. The moment the air shifts, the lodge shifts with it. And it's all so quiet. No flurry, no panic, just a steady rhythm of small acts. The fire brightens slightly. The hides draw tighter. The bedding feels heavier. Within minutes, the air stops cooling and holds steady again. You realize this is resilience built into the very fabric of life here. The cold may prowl at any hour, but it's met by a collective vigilance honed over countless winters. Everyone's comfort depends on everyone's awareness. By the time the moon is high, the teepee is once again a sealed world. The wind prowls and presses at the walls. But inside, nothing stirs except the steady breath of sleepers, the soft glow of coals, and the quiet certainty that warmth, like care, is never left a chance. Warmth here isn't a static condition. It's a living thing, constantly adjusted, readjusted, tended, until it holds fast through the night. And then, without warning, the blizzard arrives in the early hours, not with a slow warning, but as if the entire prairie suddenly exhaled ice. The wind slams into the teepee with such force the poles hum, and the hides shudder in their lashings. Snow swirls everywhere at once, drifting to the smoke hole when the gusts shift, piling against the base, even slipping through the tiniest gap beneath the door flap. Inside, there's no panic, only quick, practiced movements. The fire is fed until flames rise tall, casting sharp, steady light against the walls. Extra hides come down from their pegs and are doubled over the most exposed sections. The sleeping circle tightens, bedding pulled inward so each person's warmth overlaps with the next. A heated stone is passed hand to hand before being buried deep in the pile of furs where the youngest children sleep. Winter camp accounts describe blizzards like this not just as tests of the teepee's design, but of the people's coordination. Yes, the conical shape deflects much of the wind, but in a storm this fierce, the true strength lies in how fast a lodge can be fortified. Everyone has a role. One holds the door flap sealed tight. Another keeps the fire breathing without choking the space with smoke. Someone watches the lashings, ready to secure a pole if it shifts. Elders tell of storms that lasted days. Fire is never allowed to die. Every scrap of dry wood carefully rationed. Snow sometimes piled so high the teepee was half buried, the drifts becoming part of the insulation. The danger wasn't just the cold. It was the weight of the snow, the dwindling fuel, the silence that could mean frostbite before dawn. Now, you feel the storm's power in your bones. The wind howls in shifting pitches, each note shaped by how it strikes the lodge. Beyond these walls, the air is cold enough to freeze bare skin in minutes. But inside, firelight warms your face, and the scent of wood smoke and leather wraps around you like a promise. You are safe here. Anthropologists debate whether these emergency measures, tightening the lodge, layering hides, sharing body heat, are special crisis behaviors or just intensified versions of everyday winter life. Watching now, you see it's both. The same skills used each night are simply sharpened, accelerated, made more deliberate when the stakes rise. Hours pass in the muffled glow of firelight and snow-dampened sound. The storm still rages, but the lodge holds. Even the dogs are calm, curled against bedding, trusting the people to keep the warmth alive. And they're right to trust. Nothing here is left to chance. Every hide, every ember, every small adjustment is part of a web of care that turns a teepee from shelter into fortress. By the second morning, the wind has lost its teeth. The teepee stands half buried in drifts, its lower walls hidden beneath a smooth, glittering slope of snow. When the door flap lifts, pale light floods in, along with air so still it feels heavy with peace. The blizzard's roar is given way to the deep quiet that follows snowfall, broken only by the soft creak of settling drifts. The fire burns low but steady. The air inside is warmer than you'd expect after 2 days under siege. The snow that swallowed the base has acted like a second skin, locking in heat, muffling sound, wrapping the lodge in silence. People move slowly, stretching limbs grown used to close quarters. There's no rush to burst back outside. Winter still waits beyond the drifts, patient, endless. And in the soft morning light, you notice something almost invisible. The calm on people's faces. They've done this before. They know storms come and go. That preparedness isn't a burden. It's a rhythm. Each night's warmth was built from countless small acts. Banking coals, tightening lashings, slipping a warm stone into a child's furs, adjusting smoke flaps by touch in the dark. Oral histories speak of winter survival not as a single skill, but as a legacy, a chain of knowledge passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. This lodge holds more than hides and poles. It carries the memory of winters endured, lessons learned, storms outlasted. Every crease in the leather, every patch in the sinew, is a record of resilience. Some researchers argue that this accumulated wisdom, woven quietly into daily life, is as vital as the teepee's design itself. Without it, even the best-built lodge could fail. With it, even a modest one becomes a cradle of survival. Sitting here, you understand. The structure is only the frame. The true shelter is a knowledge alive in every choice, every movement, every shared task. When the flap lifts again, sunlight brightens the snow. Voices call from beyond the drifts. Soon, paths will be dug, wood gathered, animals checked. Life will resume its outward rhythm, but the inward one remains. The vigilance, the adaptability, the steady tending of warmth. You realizing that surviving winter here isn't about conquering the cold. It's about living alongside it, shaping your habits, your home, your community, until even the harshest nights become part of a cycle you know by heart. And in that understanding lies the deepest warmth of all. Now that the storm has passed and the camp breathes again, imagine the fire's glow softening into embers, its heat lingering like a memory in the air. The hides above you no longer strain. They curve gently, holding the last of the night's comfort close. Outside, the snow lies unbroken, catching the pale gold of a rising sun. You sink deeper into the bedding. The furs mold around you. The scent of smoke and hide wraps you in something older than words. The air is still cool. Winter hasn't vanished, but it no longer bites. It rests against your skin like a steady hand. Around you, people move with unhurried grace. Voices murmur, calm and unhurried. Even the dogs by the door seem content to let the morning unfold at its own pace. You close your eyes. The weight of the season settles, not as a burden, but as belonging. The cold is still out there, yes, but it's no longer a threat. It's part of the world. And so, are you. You've learned how to hold your place, not by force, but by balance. Heat and hide, ember and story, watchfulness and rest. In this quiet, you can almost hear it, the deep, steady pulse of winter life in the lodge. And as the last tendrils of sleep curl the edges of your mind, you know this shared, enduring warmth will carry you through every night until spring returns. The morning after the blizzard unfolds with a quiet reverence, as if the world itself is catching its breath. Sunlight spills over the drifts in long, pale gold ribbons, glinting off crystalline snow like scattered mica. The camp, half buried and softened by the storm's weight, looks less like a collection of shelters and more like something grown from the earth, a cluster of warm, breathing mounds nestled into the land's contours. Smoke curls from the tipis in thin, steady streams, no longer fighting the wind but rising straight and calm into the clear sky. You step outside, boots sinking into the fresh snow with a satisfying hush. The air is so clean it feels like glass. Cold, yes, but sharp and pure, scrubbed free of the storm's frantic energy. Already, people are moving with purpose, clearing paths with wide wooden shovels, checking on horses tethered near the cottonwoods, shaking snow from stacked firewood. But there's no urgency in their movements, only the quiet efficiency of those who understand that winter rewards patience, not haste. Near the center of camp, a group gathers around a low stone ring where a fire has been newly lit. Not for warmth, but for melting snow. A pot sits in the coals, already steaming. One woman stirs it with a long bone spoon while another unrolls a hide beside her, laying out dried choke cherries and strips of bison jerky. They're preparing pemmican. You realize the storm may have passed, but its lessons linger. Fuel and food must be replenished. Reserves must be rebuilt. As you watch, a young boy, no older than 6, carefully places a smooth river stone into the pot. For wait, he explains when he catches your eye, his breath puffing in the air, so the snow melts faster. You smile. It's a small thing, but it's knowledge, passed down, practiced, alive. Back inside your lodge, the air still holds the deep, layered warmth of the night before. The fire has been coaxed back to life, and the scent of simmering broth fills the space. But something feels different. Not just the calm after the storm, but a subtle shift in the rhythm of the camp. Conversations are quieter, more focused. Eyes linger on the horizon longer than usual. You notice it first in the way the elders move. They don't just check the snowdrifts. They study them. One man kneels at the edge of camp, running his fingers through a wind-carved ridge of snow, then lifts his hand to taste the air. Another stands with her back to the wind, eyes closed, listening. What is it? You ask the woman stirring the broth. She doesn't look up, but her voice is steady. The storm came from the north, she says, but it carried something else. Dry air, too dry for this time of year. You frown. Does that matter? She finally meets your gaze, and in her eyes you see not fear, but assessment. It means the cold isn't done with us. And the herds, they'll move. Ah, the bison. For days now, hunting parties have returned with fewer tracks, fewer signs. The storm may have buried the land, but it also scattered the animals, pushing them towards sheltered valleys or distant river bends. If the herds are gone, the camp can't stay. Not even this well-built, well-tended circle of tipis can sustain life without food. By midday, the talk turns to plans. Not the frantic kind, but the deliberate, layered conversations of people who've weathered scarcity before. A scout returns from the ridge to the east, his cheeks wind-chapped, his breath sharp. He speaks briefly with the elders, then points toward the southern horizon. Smoke, he says, faint, but steady. Not a wildfire, too controlled. Another camp? Traders? Or perhaps a winter settlement of a neighboring band. Discussions ripple through the lodge. Some argue for sending a messenger. Others suggest moving the entire camp closer. Strength in numbers, shared resources, shared watchfulness. But there's hesitation, too. Trust must be earned, especially in deep winter. Strangers can mean aid or danger. That evening, as dusk paints the snow in violet and rose, a decision is made. 2 riders will go at first light, not to approach, but to observe, to read the signs. Are the fires well tended? Are the lodges tight against the cold? Are there children's tracks in the snow? These details will tell more than words ever could. You volunteer to go. The elders consider you for a long moment. Then the woman who stirred the broth nods. You've watched. You've learned. That's half the journey. The night before departure is spent in quiet preparation. Your winter robe is checked for thin spots. Your leggings reinforced with an extra layer of rabbit fur. A small pouch is filled with dried meat, pemmican, and a handful of willow bark for pain, for tea, for the road. And from the fire's embers, 2 stones are wrapped in damp hide, tucked into your satchel to keep your hands warm on the ride. But the most important thing you're given isn't food or gear. Before you sleep, the elder who reads the wind presses something into your palm, a small, smooth piece of antler, carved with a spiral that ends in a single dot. For the trail, he says, if you lose your way, hold it. Remember, the wind always moves toward the open. Follow its back, not its teeth. You don't fully understand, but you tuck it into your robe, next to your heart. At dawn, the world is still. The snow has crusted overnight, making travel easier. Your horse, a sturdy, thick-coated mare, snorts softly as you mount. Beside you rides Kale, the scout who first saw the smoke. He's lean, quiet, with eyes that miss nothing. Without a word, he nods once, then nudges his horse forward. The ride is silent at first. The only sounds are the crunch of hooves on snow, the creak of leather, the soft exhale of breath. But as the sun climbs, Kale begins to speak, not in stories, but in lessons. See how the snow lies on that slope? He asks, pointing to a gentle rise. It's smooth, no drifts. That means the wind passes over it, not around. Good place for a camp. You look. He's right. The snow is even undisturbed. And there, he continues, gesturing to stand of bare willows. Bent branches. Not broken, bent. That's where bison passed through maybe 2 days ago. Heavy animals leave soft signs in deep snow. You commit it all to memory. By midday, you crest a low ridge, and there it is. Smoke. 3 thin columns rising from a valley below, nestled between a frozen river and a wall of bluffs. The camp is smaller than yours, maybe 10 tipis, but everyone is perfectly pitched. Smoke holes aligned, windbreaks built with care. Snow has been packed tightly around each base. And near the center, you see what makes your breath catch. Children, not just 1 or 2, but a whole group, building a low wall of snow blocks, laughing as they pack the seams. Their cheeks are pink, their robes thick and well-worn. They look safe. Kale lets out a slow breath. They know winter, he says, but then he stiffens. Wait! He points to the far edge of the camp. 2 figures on horseback, watching the horizon, not toward you, but west, and beyond them, on the open plain, something glints in the sun. Not snow, metal, repeating rifles. Your stomach tightens. Traders? Soldiers? Or raiders? Cale doesn't wait. He turns his horse slightly, angling away from a ridge. We go back, he says. Now. But as you turn, a new sound cuts through the air, a low, mournful call, like a horn made of hide and bone. Not a warning, not a threat, a signal. And from your own camp, miles away, you hear it echoed, faint but clear. Someone is answering. Cale pulls his horse to a stop. His expression shifts, not fear but calculation. They're signaling each other, he murmurs. Not enemies, allies. You stare at the distant camp. If that's true, then the metal you saw wasn't weapons. It was tools, trade goods, maybe even kettles or axe heads. The implications settle over you like a second robe. This isn't just another winter encampment. It's a gathering. And your people, they've been summoned. Cale meets your eyes. We don't go back, he says slowly. We go down. Your pulse quickens. This is beyond observation. This is trust. But before you can respond, a new sound rises. Not from a valley, but from the frozen river below. A deep rhythmic thudding, like drums. Or hoofbeats. Many of them. You and Cale exchange a glance. Without a word, you urge your horses forward, not down into the valley, but along the ridge, staying hidden in the tree line. As you ride, the thudding grows louder, and then you see them, bison, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, moving slowly across the ice, their massive forms dark against the white. They're not running, they're traveling, following a path only they understand, perhaps toward a sheltered bend where the snow is shallow, where grass might still push through the frost. The camp in the valley has seen them too. People are already emerging from lodges, pointing, speaking in quick, excited voices. Hunting parties are being assembled. Cale grins, a rare, bright thing. The storm pushed them south, he says, and they led us right to them. You understand now. The smoke signals, the gathering, the timing. This wasn't coincidence. It was coordination. Someone in your camp knew. Someone knew the herds would move after the blizzard, knew they'd be vulnerable, knew that if the camps joined forces, the hunt could feed them all through the rest of winter. As you watch, a rider breaks from a valley camp and gallops toward the bison. Not to chase, but to herd. Others follow, spreading out in a wide arc, guiding the animals gently, respectfully, like shepherds moving sheep. Cale turns to you. We go back. Fast. Tell them. The time is now. You don't need to be told twice. The ride home is a blur of wind and snow and pounding hooves. But your mind is clear, racing ahead. When you burst into camp breathless and snow-dusted, the elders are already waiting, as if they knew you'd come with news. You speak quickly, breathlessly, describing the bison, the camp, the signals. The woman who stirred the broth closes her eyes for a long moment. Then she opens them, and there's a fire in them you haven't seen before. Prepare the hunters, she says. Not just a few, all who can ride. We join them by moonrise. The camp erupts into motion, but not chaos. This is a dance they rehearse in spirit, if not in practice. Robes are checked. Lances are sharpened. Horses are saddled. And from every lodge, bundles are packed, not just for the hunt, but for the journey. Extra hides, dried food, water skins lined with pitch to keep them from freezing. But as you help ready your own gear, the elder who gave you the antler carving finds you again. You saw more than bison, he says quietly. You hesitate. I saw cooperation. He nods. Winter teaches many things. But the deepest lesson is this. No one survived alone. Not in cold. Not in hunger. Not in silence. He places a hand on your shoulder. Tonight, you ride not just as a hunter, but as a bridge. As dusk falls, the camp begins to move, not all at once, but in waves. First the hunters, then the pack horses, then the families who will follow once the hunt is done. The teepees are struck with practice speed, hides folded, poles stacked. Even the snow banks are left behind, no longer needed, for the journey ahead will be short and the destination already warm. You mount your horse, the antler carving warm against your chest. Behind you, the last embers of the campfire are wrapped in bark, ready to carry. Ahead, the moon rises, silver in the snow, and somewhere in the distance, drums beat softly against the ice. The hunt is calling. But this is more than a hunt. It's the beginning of something larger, a network of camps bound by smoke signals and shared storms, by knowledge passed on river stones and spiral carvings, by the quiet understanding that warmth is not just fire and fur, but trust, movement, and the courage to walk toward another's light. As your horse steps forward, hooves breaking the crust of snow, you feel it, not just the cold at your back, but the future ahead. And for the first time, you don't just survive the winter. You belong to it. The ride to the valley takes less time than you expect. The moon is high, the snow firm beneath hooves. In the distance, the 3 columns of smoke still rise, steady, welcoming. As you near the bluffs, a figure emerges from the tree line. The same scout who first saw your camp. He raises a hand, not in challenge, but in greeting. Cale answers with soft call, and the man steps aside, gesturing for you to follow. The valley opens before you. The bison are closer now, resting on the river ice, their breath steaming in the moonlight. The other camp is alive with quiet activity. Fires bank low, robes spread for sleeping, watchmen pacing the perimeter. But there's no tension, only readiness. Your people are greeted, without ceremony. Hands are clasped. Horses are tied together. A pot of broth is offered. Yours, from your own camp stores, brought ahead by a rider who left before you. You recognize the smell: willow bark, bison marrow, dry berries. The woman who stirred the broth kneels beside the fire of the valley camp's elder, a man with a face like weathered stone and eyes that hold the memory of 100 winters. They speak in low tones, not in words of trade or alliance, but in the language of the land. Wind direction, snow depth, her behavior. You sit nearby, warming your hands, listening. And then the drums begin again. Not loud, not urgent, just a steady, grounding beat. One of the valley camp's young men rises and begins to dance, not for show, but as preparation. His movements mimic the bison, the lowering of the head, the sweep of the horns, the slow, powerful step. Others join, their robes dark against the snow, their feet stirring up powdery clouds. It's not a ritual you've seen before, but you understand it instantly. This is how they ask, not with weapons, not with force, but with respect, with story, with the body remembering what the land provides. As the dance continues, hunters from both camps begin to gather near the riverbank. No one gives orders. No one shouts. They simply move into position, checking lances, adjusting grips, sharing glances that hold entire conversations. Cale appears at your side, handing you a lance. "You ride with me," he says. Your heart pounds, not with fear, but with purpose. You've watched. You've learned. Now you participate. The drums fade. The dancers step back. And in the silence that follows, the only sound is the wind moving over snow and the deep, rumbling breath of the bison, waiting. The hunt begins not with a charge, but with a whisper. Hunters move like shadows along the ice, spreading out, closing the arc. No sudden movements. No loud cries. Just patience. Presence. The understanding that the bison give themselves, not taken, but offered. And as you guide your horse forward, lance in hand, you feel something new in your chest. Not just the cold of winter, but the warmth of belonging to something ancient, vital, and deeply wise. The night is long. The river ice gleams. And somewhere beyond the bluffs, another camp waits. Smoke rising, hearts open, ready to share not just food, but fire, story, and the unbroken chain of winter's enduring warmth. The hunt is just beginning. And so are you. The hunt unfolds not in a roar, but in a breath. As you and the others ease onto the river ice, the world narrows to silence, snow, and the low, rumbling exhalations of the bison herd ahead. Moonlight glints off the frozen surface, casting long, wavering shadows that seem to move with the animal's slow shifts. There's no rush, only a patient closing of the circle, guided by instinct honed over lifetimes. The hunters don't charge. They glide, boots crunching softly on the crust, horses moving with the quiet precision of wolves on a trail. Cale gestures toward the lead bull, a massive, humped silhouette with horns dusted in frost. He decides. Cale murmurs. If he runs, they all run. If he stands, they wait. You hold your lance low, your pulse steady. This isn't about conquest. It's about reciprocity. The bison know winter as well as anyone. They weathered the blizzard, navigated the drifts, and now rest where the river bends, where the snow is shallow and old grass peeks through. They aren't cornered. They're choosing. And when the elder hunter from the valley camp steps forward, arms raised not with weapon but with open palms, the lead bull lifts his head and stills. A murmur passes through the herd. Calves gather close to their mothers. The bull snorts once, a plume of steam catching the moonlight like breath made visible. Then, with a slow turn of his massive head, he lowers his gaze, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. That's the signal. One hunter steps forward, not the strongest, not the fastest, but the one who prepared the offering. From a hide pouch, he draws a small bundle, sage, sweetgrass, and a strip of red ochre-stained cloth. He places it gently on the ice, then kneels. Only then does the first lance rise. It's quick, clean, honoring. The chosen bison, strong, healthy, ready, falls without panic. The herd doesn't flee. They watch. And when it's done, they turn as one and melt into the darkness beyond the river bend, their hoofbeats fading like distant thunder. No cheers erupt, only quiet gratitude. Hands move swiftly now, skinning, butchering, wrapping meat in clean hides. Every part will be used. Sinew for thread, bones for tools, hide for robes. Nothing is wasted. As you help lift a haunch onto a travois, a woman from a valley camp presses a warm stone into your hands, fresh from their fire. For the walk back, she says. Her eyes hold no stranger's distance, only the recognition of shared work. Back at the camp, the fires are already blazing, not just for cooking, but for celebration and for ceremony. The two camps are no longer separate. Tipis stand interwoven. Smoke holds a line as if they'd always belonged together. Children from both groups play near the fire, their laughter mingling with the pop of fat dripping onto coals. You sit by the central hearth, warming your hands, when the elder from a valley camp approaches. His name, you learn, is Tashina, Wind Speaker. He carries a hide-wrap bundle and sets it down between you and your camp's elder, the woman who stirred the broth. Lara, you now know. The storm brought more than snow, Tashina says, his voice like dry leaves over stone. It brought a message. He unwraps the bundle. Inside rests a carved elk antler, long spiraled, etched with symbols you don't recognize. But Lara inhales sharply. It's the map of the hollows, she whispers. Tashina nods. My grandfather received it from your people's ancestors, 3 generations past. It shows the winter shelters along the Red Willow River, places where snow melts slow, wind breaks early, and springs stay open even in deepest cold. You lean forward. This isn't just a map. It's a lifeline, passed between bands during times of scarcity, forgotten in seasons of plenty, now remembered in need. Why show it now, you ask? Tashina's gaze drifts to the children playing near the fire. Because the cold is changing. The blizzards come faster. The herds scatter farther. If we stay in one place too long, he doesn't finish. He doesn't need to. Lara places a hand on the antler map. We keep it 3 days, she says. Then it goes to the next camp, south, where the cottonwoods grow thick. They'll need it soon. A plan forms in the quiet that follows. Not just to share food, but to share knowledge. To create a chain of winter refuges, connected not by roads, but by memory, trust, and smoke signals. Each camp becomes a node in a living network, a web of warmth stretching across the plains. As the night deepens, storytelling begins, not as entertainment, but as transmission. Elders from both camps take turns. One tells of a winter so cold, the stars crack like ice. Another speaks of a mare who led her herd through a whiteout by following the scent of sage beneath the snow. And then Tashina shares a tale that stills the firelight. Long ago, he begins, before horses, before iron, the people walked with the bison, not behind them, not ahead, alongside. They followed the same paths, drank from the same springs, slept under the same stars. When a calf was born, the people sang. When an elder bison died, they mourned. They understood survival wasn't about taking. It was about walking together. You feel the weight of that truth settle in your bones. Later, as you prepare your bedding near the shared fire, a young girl from the valley camp approaches shyly. She holds out a small pouch woven from sinew and rabbit fur. For your horse, she says. It's lined with moss. Keeps the hooves dry in deep snow. You accept it, touched. Thank you. She hesitates, then points to your robe. Your stitching is like my grandmother's. You look down. The repair on your sleeve, done weeks ago with uneven stitches, is indeed similar to the patterns on the girl's own moccasins. Lara notices and smiles. Your grandmother traded with our camp when the rivers ran high. She tells the girl. She taught our women that stitch, called the braid of two rivers. The girl's eyes widen. Then we're family? Lara places a gentle hand on her head. In winter, all who share fire are family. The next morning dawns clear and brittle. Smoke from a dozen tipis rises straight into a sky. So blue it aches. Work resumes, but now it's collaborative. Men from both camps repair sleds together, testing lashings, sharing tools. Women mix pemmican recipes, trading choke cherries for juniper berries. Even the dogs have made friends, napping in shared piles near the warmest lodges. But beneath the harmony, urgency hums. The antler map must move on, and the bison meat won't last forever. You're chosen to carry the map south, not alone this time. Tashina's granddaughter, Mira, a girl of 12 with eyes that miss nothing, will go with you. She knows the southern trails better than anyone. She reads the land like a book. Tashina says, and you, he adds, looking at you, are learning to listen. Preparations are swift. Your horses are fitted with snowshoes, wide, woven panels of rawhide and willow that spread their weight on deep drifts. Your satchels hold dried meat marrow fat cakes and a small clay pot of rendered bison grease, for chapped skin, for waterproofing seams, for starting fires in wet wood. And wrapped in smoked hide, the antler map rests against your chest, its spiral etching pressing gently with every breath. Before you leave, Lara gives you one final gift, a small pouch filled with charred willow bark and pine resin. For the trail, she says, if you're lost, burn a pinch. The smoke rises true, even in wind. And the scent, it carries memory. Mira watches, then adds her own offering, a tiny carving of a raven, strung on sinew. He finds a way when clouds hide the sun. She says simply, you tie it beside the antler. At midday, you mount your horses. The two camps gather to see you off. Not with fanfare, but with quiet nods, hands pressed to hearts. No one speaks of danger. They don't need to. Winter is danger enough. But as you turn south, something new stirs in your chest. Not just the weight of responsibility, but the lightness of connection. You're no longer just a traveler. You're a thread in a growing web. The first leg of the journey is familiar. Rolling plains, frozen streams, stands of skeletal cottonwoods. Mira rides ahead, pointing out signs you'd never notice. A patch of snow melted in a perfect circle, warm spring below, a hawk circling low over a rise, mice beneath the snow, he's hunting. The way frost clings to the north side of rocks. Wind's been steady from the west. By dusk, you make camp at a shallow draw where the snow is thin and the wind muted. Mira builds a fire in a ring of stones, then unpacks a hide to lay over the ground. So the cold doesn't climb up through your bones, she explains. You bank the fire with care, remembering the lessons of the blizzard night. As you eat, stew made from yesterday's bison, flavored with wild onion, Mira asks, why did you come with us? You could have stayed. You were safe. You consider question. Because safety isn't enough, you say, finally. Not when others are walking in the cold. She nods. as if she's heard that truth before. That night, the wind picks up again. Not a blizzard, but a steady, searching gust. You wake once to find Mira adjusting the hide over your bedding, tucking it tight against the draft. "The cold sneaks in when you sleep," she whispers, "like a thief." You thank her, and she curls back into her own furs, already drifting off. By morning, the sky is overcast, a soft gray blanket that swallows the horizon. Mira studies it, then points south. Storm coming, but slow. We have time. You press on, the land growing more rugged, hills rising like frozen waves, ravines cutting deep where meltwater once rushed. In one narrow valley, you find evidence of another camp, a ring of stones blackened by old fires, a few scattered beads, and most telling, deep tracks leading west. Fresh, from days ago. "Not our people," Mira says, crouching to examine the prints. "But they know the trails. See how they follow the high ground? Avoids the ice traps in the low places." You add this to your memory. Every sign is a lesson. On the third day, the storm arrives, not as a wall of snow, but as a thick, swirling fog that muffles sound and blurs the world into ghosts. You can't see 10 paces ahead. Your horse snorts nervously, ears flicking. Mira doesn't panic. She dismounts, presses her palm to the ground, and closes her eyes. After a long moment, she rises. The wind's from the east, the river's to our left. We follow it, but the fog plays tricks. Twice, you double back, certain you pass the same rock formation. Your hands grow numb despite the grease mittens. Doubt creeps in. What if you're leading Mira in circles? What if the antler map never reaches the next camp? Then you remember Liara's pouch. You pull it out, sprinkle a pinch of the black powder onto a flat stone, and light it with your fire striker. The resin catches instantly, sending up a thin, fragrant smoke that, despite the wind, rises straight and true. Mira watches, eyes wide. "How?" "It's not the smoke," you say, remembering Liara's words. "It's the intention. The land knows when you're lost. It answers if you ask with respect." Following the smoke's direction, you find the riverbank within the hour. And there, carved faintly into bark of a cottonwood, a spiral, the same as the antler map. Someone has been here. Recently. Hope surges. That night, you shelter beneath a rocky overhang. The horses huddle close for warmth. Mira shares a story her grandmother told her about a winter so long, the moon forgot to rise. "But the people didn't fear the dark," she says, her voice soft in the firelight. "They sang to it, and the darkness sang back." You realize then that this journey isn't just about delivering a map. It's about carrying song, memory, the quiet certainty that no one walks alone. By dawn, the fog is lifted, revealing a sight that steals your breath. A vast, open basin ringed by red sandstone cliffs, the hollow of 2 rivers, just as the map showed. And nestled in its center, half hidden by juniper scrub, smoke curls from 3 tipis. You found them, but as you approach, Mira grabs your arm. "Wait." She points. The tipis are pitched perfectly, but the entrance flaps face north, against the prevailing wind. A mistake no winter camp would make. "Unless someone's in trouble," she whispers. You scan the camp. No children playing. No dogs barking. The fire smoke is thin, weak, and near the largest lodge, a single figure sits hunched by the embers. Too still. You dismount slowly, hands open, calling out in the greeting of your people. The figure stirs, lifts a face gaunt with exhaustion. It's an old man, alone. His voice cracks as he speaks. "My family gone. Fever. Only me left." He gestures weakly to the teepees. "I keep the fires for them, in case they return." Your heart breaks. But Mira is already moving. She unloads bundles from her horse, dried meat firewood, a thick robe. "We stay," she says firmly. And you know she's right. This isn't just a delivery. It's a rescue. As you help the old man to his feet, his bones light as bird wings, you realize the antler map's true purpose. It's not just about places. It's about people, about knowing where help might be needed and who might be waiting to give it. You rebuild the fire, melt snow for broth, wrap the old man in furs. And as night falls, you tell him of the camps to the north, of shared hunts, of children playing, of smoke signals that say, asterisk, we are here. You are not alone, asterisk. He weeps quietly. Then, with trembling hands, he reaches into his robe and pulls out a small stone, carved with a new symbol, a spiral with wings. My son made this, he says. Before. He presses it into your palm. Take it, add it to your map. So others know this hollow holds both sorrow and shelter. You nod, tears in your own eyes. The storm may have passed, but the winter isn't over, and neither is your journey. For beyond these cliffs, other hollows wait, other fires burn low, other voices whisper into the wind, hoping someone will hear. You stoke the fire higher, feed the old man broth, watch Mira braid rabbit fur into a new pair of mittens for him. Tomorrow, you'll teach him the smoke signal, show him how to send word north that help has come. And when he's strong enough, you'll help him decide, stay here or join the gathering to the north. But tonight, you simply sit in the circle of warmth. 3 souls in a vast, cold world, bound not by blood, but by the oldest promise of all. While I have fire, you shall not freeze. Outside, the wind begins to rise again, but inside, the fire holds. And so do you. The fire crackles softly in the stone ring, its warmth barely reaching the edges of the hollow where the old man, whose name you learn is Ian, has lived alone for weeks. He sleeps now, wrapped in Myra's spare robe, his breath slow and steady. Outside, the wind moans through the red sandstone cliffs, carrying the first icy hints of another storm. But inside the teepee, time stretches like tan hide, taut with purpose, yet yielding to the quiet rhythm of healing. You and Mira sit near the entrance, sharing a bowl of broth made from the last of your bison meat, and wild onions Mira found tucked beneath a south-facing rock. The antler map rests between you, and now, nestled beside it, is Ian's carved stone, a spiral with wings, light as bone but heavy with grief and hope. We can't leave him, Mira says, not as a question, but as truth. You nod, but we can't stay forever either. The map must keep moving. Mira stirs the broth with a stick. What if we don't carry it alone? What if we teach him to send it? He knows this land better than anyone. You look toward Ian, his face softened by firelight. He's not just a survivor. He's a keeper of place. And places, you're beginning to understand, are only as strong as the people who remember them. By dawn, Ian is awake, clear-eyed. He watches you pack your things with quiet intensity. When you show him the smoke signal, 3 puffs, then a long stream to mean all is well, but aid remains. He nods slowly. My wife taught me that, he murmurs, before the cough took her. He rises, stiff but determined, and leads you to a small cache hidden beneath a flat stone near the riverbank. Inside, dried chokecherries, smoked fish wrapped in bark, and a bundle of tightly rolled hides. For the next traveler, he says, whoever comes after you. Then he points south beyond the basin. There's another hollow, deeper, hidden by pinyon trees. My brother's family winters there. If the storms worsen, they'll need to know about the gathering to the north. Your pulse quickens. The map isn't static. It's growing, branching like roots through the frozen earth. You spend the day preparing. Mira teaches Ian how to wrap the antler map in double layers of smoked hide so moisture won't warp it. You show him how to read the spiral's direction using the sun and the river's curve. And Ian, in turn, carves a new marker, a small disc of elk bone etched with the shape of the pinyon hollow, and ties it to the map with sinew. Now it remembers more, he says, his voice firmer than it's been in weeks. That evening, as the sky bruises purple with twilight, you hear it, a distant rhythmic drumming, not from the north, from the south. Mira freezes, head tilted. Not a warning, she whispers. A call. Ian's eyes widen. My brother's signal. They're moving. You exchange glances. The storm is coming faster than anyone predicted, and the southern camp is on the move, likely toward this very hollow. We stay, you say. Just one more night. But fate has other plans. Before moonrise, 3 figures emerge in the tree line. 2 adults and a child, leading a pack horse laden with bundles. Their robes are dusted with snow, their faces drawn with exhaustion. But when they see Ian standing by the fire, the woman drops to her knees, sobbing. It's his niece Nima and her family. Reunions unfold in hushed tones and tight embraces. Nima explains that fever swept through their camp too, but they fled before it could take more. They followed the old trails, guided by memory and the hope that Ian might still be here. Now the hollow holds 6 souls, and soon more. Word spreads quickly in winter. By morning, 2 more families arrive from nearby ridges, drawn by the steady smoke and the promise of shared warmth. The tipis multiply. Fire pits double. And the antler map, now wrapped with new markers and whispered directions, sits at the center of it all like a living compass. You realize something profound. The map isn't just a tool for survival. It's becoming a covenant, a silent agreement between camps to watch for one another, to send help, to remember. Mira begins teaching the children the smoke signals. You help the men reinforce windbreaks with juniper boughs. And Ian, standing taller each day, leads nightly gatherings where stories are exchanged, not just of hunts or storms, but medicines of star patterns of which plants hold water beneath the snow. Then, on the 4th night, a rider appears on the northern ridge. It's Kale. He's leaner, his horse lathered despite the cold, but his eyes are bright with urgency. He dismounts and strides into the firelight without ceremony. The gathering grows, he announces. 5 more camps have joined since you left. We built a central lodge, big enough for councils, for teaching, for storing shared food. He turns to you. Laira sent me. She says the web is strong, but it needs eyes in the south. He unrolls a fresh hide, not a map, but a ledger of sorts. On it, symbols mark each camp. How many people, what resources they have, what they need. We're not just surviving anymore. Kale says, his voice low with awe. We're organizing. A ripple of wonder passes through the group. This is more than cooperation. It's a network, fluid, adaptive, alive. Nima steps forward. We have pinyon nuts, dried fish, and my husband knows how to find open springs, even when the ground is frozen. Kale nods, marking it on the hide. That knowledge is gold. Then he looks at you, and Mira, you've done more than deliver a map. You've shown that the threads can stretch and hold. But the conversation is cut short by a sharp cry from one of the children. She's pointing west, where the sky is darkening unnaturally fast. Storm, Ian says grimly. Not just snow, ice wind. You've heard of it. A rare, biting gale that freezes moisture in the air before it hits the ground, glazing everything in slick, dangerous ice. Travel becomes impossible. Fires smother under rime. Even breathing can be painful. We stay, Kale says immediately. All of us. Panic flickers, but Ian raises his hand. No, we prepare. What follows is a symphony of practice calm. Tipis are reinforced with extra lashings. Snow is packed thick around the bases. Every ember is banked deep in ash. Water skins are brought inside. And the central fire, the one that will sustain them all, is built in a wide, shallow pit lined with flat stones to radiate heat evenly. As the first icy pellets begin to hiss against the hides, you gather with the others in the largest lodge. Children are wrapped in double layers. Elders are given the innermost spots. And the antler map, now adorned with Ian's winged spiral, Nima's pinion symbol, and a new mark from Kale, a circle with 4 points for the cardinal directions, is placed on a raised mat near the fire as if it, too, must be kept warm. Mira curls up beside you, her raven carving clutched in her hand. Do you think they'll come? She asks quietly. Who? The ones after us. The ones we haven't met yet. You look around the lodge, at Ian sharing broth with his niece, at Kale checking the smoke flaps, at children whispering stories to each other like secrets. They already have, you say. The ice storm rages for 2 days. Wind howls like a wounded thing, hurling frozen needles against the hides. Ice builds along the smoke hole, forcing constant tending to keep the air breathable. But inside, the lodge holds. Heat circulates. Bodies share warmth. And through it all, the fire never dies. On the third morning, silence. You step outside to a world transformed. Everything is sheathed in glassy ice, trees, rocks. Even the snowdrifts glitter like shattered crystal. The air is so cold it steals your breath, but the sun is high and the sky is clear. Kale joins you, squinting at the horizon. The storm broke early. That's good. But you're staring at something else. In the distance, near the southern pass, a thin column of smoke rises, steady, deliberate. Mira appears at your side, following your gaze. They saw our signal, she says, and they answered. Kale grins. The web grows. You spend the next hours melting ice for water, checking on horses, and repairing windbreaks cracked by the storm. But your mind is already racing ahead. That smoke means another camp is out there, waiting, watching, ready to join. And then Ian calls you over. He's standing by the river, where the ice has begun to melt along the edges. In his hand, he holds a smooth, flat stone, painted with a new symbol, a handprint over a spiral. My people's oldest sign, he says. It means asterisk I was here. I survived. Pass it on, asterisk. He presses it into your palm. Take it south. Find them. Tell them the hollow is open. You don't argue. You simply nod. Because you understand now, this isn't just about warmth or food or even safety. It's about continuity. About ensuring that no matter how deep the winter, no one is forgotten. Preparations begin again, but this time you're not alone. Nima packs you pemmican laced with pinyon, nuts for extra fat. Kale gives you a new fire striker wrapped in oiled hide. And Mira braids a new rope for your satchel, weaving in strands of her own hair. So the wind knows you're coming, she says with a smile. Ian walks you to the edge of the basin as the sun sets, painting the cliffs in fiery gold. You carry more than a map now, he says. You carry memory. And memory is what outlives the coldest night. You mount your horse, the antler map, and Ian's stone tucked safely against your chest. Behind you, the hollow glows with firelight, a beacon in the vast white silence. But ahead, south, where the next smoke rises, the future waits. You nudge your horse forward. The ice crunches underhoof, and the wind, for the first time in days, feels less like an enemy and more like a companion, guiding you onward, because the story isn't over. It's just finding new hands to hold it. The wind carries you south, not with force, but with a quiet insistence, as if the land itself is leaning into your journey. Behind you, the hollow of two rivers fades into the twilight, its smoke rising like a promise written in sky. Ahead, the distant plume grows clearer with every mile, steady and deliberate against the pale winter blue. You ride to the hush of ice-glazed trees, the raven carving at your throat tapping softly against the antler map with each breath. The cold is still there, deep, ancient, unyielding, but it no longer feels like a wall. It feels like a threshold. By dusk, you crest a low ridge and see them. 3 tipis nestled in a grove of pinyon pines, snow packed neatly around their bases, a fire burning bright in the center. Children dart between the lodges, their laughter ringing like bells in the crisp air. An elder stands by the fire, staff in hand, watching the horizon, not with fear, but with expectation. He sees you first. Instead of calling out, he lifts his hand and makes a slow, deliberate motion in the air, 3 fingers raised, then lowered. Asterisk, welcome, traveler. You were expected. Asterisk, your breath catches. They knew, not because of magic, but because the web holds. Smoke signals, shared trails, stories carried on horseback, and etched into bone. Someone, perhaps a scout, perhaps a child watching the sky, saw your fire, read your signal, and passed a word. You guide your horse down the slope, hooves crunching on the frozen crust. As you approach, the elder steps forward, his eyes kind, his robe lined with rabbit fur worn soft by time. You carry the spiral, he says, nodding to your chest. You dismount and, without a word, unwrap the antler map. He takes it gently, his fingers tracing the new carvings, the wing spiral, the pinion branch, the handprint over the curve. A tear slips down his weathered cheek. My brother's mark, he whispers. He lives. You nod, and the hollow is open. A murmur passes through the camp. Women emerge from lodges. Men lay down their tools. Children gather at the edges, wide-eyed. The elder turns to them, raising the map high. "The web is whole," he announces. The north speaks. The south answers. "Winter will not divide us." That night, you sit by a fire that smells of pinyon smoke and roasting roots. The elder, his name is Jaron, tells you how his people nearly starved last moon, how they'd lost track of the herds, how the snow came too early. "We were folding in on ourselves," he says, waiting to disappear. But then they saw the smoke from the north. 3 puffs, a long stream, asterisk, all is well. "You are not alone," asterisk. "Hope," he says, "is the first kind of warmth." As the fire burns low, Jaron places a new carving in your hand, a smooth river stone etched with a crescent moon cradling a flame. "For the next leg," he says, "there's a band beyond the salt flats. They've been silent too long." You accept it, your fingers closing around its cool weight. But this time, you don't tuck it away. You hold out to Mira, who has ridden silently beside you all day. She looks at you, surprised. "You've carried me this far," you say softly. "Now it's your turn to lead." Her eyes shimmer. She takes a stone, then ties it to the antler map beside Ian's handprint. "We'll go together," she says, "but I'll watch the stars." You watch the ground. You smile, and in that moment, you understand the final truth of winter. Survival isn't passed down in single hands. It's passed through, from elder to child, from camp to camp, from one heart to another, until it becomes a current, strong enough to outlast even the longest night. The next morning, you ride east, not south. Because the web doesn't end, it expands. And somewhere beyond the salt flats, another fire waits to be rekindled. But before you leave, Jaron presses something into your palm, a small pouch of dried sage and sweetgrass. "For your own lodge," he says. "When you build it." You blink. "I don't have a lodge." He smiles. "You will. Everyone who carries a spiral earns one." You look down at the map, no longer just bone and sinew, but a living record of resilience, stitched together by countless hands. And for the first time, you see your own journey woven into its curves. The blizzard, the hunt, the hollow, the smoke. You are no longer just a traveler. You are a keeper. Weeks later, as spring's first thaw softens the edges of the world, you return to the northern gathering, not as a stranger, but as a thread in the web. Lara greets you with a nod that holds the weight of 100 unspoken thanks. Kale claps your shoulder, his eyes saying what words cannot. And in the center of camp, a new tipi rises. Its hides tanned by your hands, its poles lashed with rope you braided yourself. Inside, the fire is already lit, its embers banked from the same flame that burned through the blizzard. That night, as the last snow melts into the earth, you sit by the hearth and unwrap the antler map one final time. It's heavier now, layered with carvings, tied with strands of hair and sinew, smelling of smoke, sage, and distant fires. You place it on the wall, beside your own new raven carving. And when a young boy from the southern camp, Ian's great-nephew, creeps shyly to your door asking how to read the spiral, you don't hand him the map. You take him outside, point to the stars, and say, "First, learn to listen to the wind," because the story never truly ends. It only finds new voices. And as the fire crackles behind you, warm and steady, you know this winter's wisdom will burn long after the snow is gone.